name is Miguel Myers. Welcome to My Horror Confessional, where every week I will have a guest come on and talk about one classic horror movie that they haven't seen and why. We'll discuss the movie, the actors, and probably get off topic quite a bit. Once I believe they have properly atoned, I will absolve them of their horror movie sin. Today, we have my good friend Trey Hudson, star of Satan, His Own Self.
What?
Written and directed by Max Booth III, who's going to be on a future episode.
Shout out.
Trey is a poet, an author, an all-around Renaissance man, and a cool motherfucker. If Uncle Jesse was an actual person in 2021, it would be Trey Hudson.
Highest compliment.
Trey, thanks for coming on to the show.
Thank you, man. That was quite the introduction.
Yeah,
that's amazing. Uncle Jesse, I mean, that's who I always wanted to be when I was growing up.
I mean, you ride the motorcycle. I don't think
it's true.
I don't think he had any tattoos, but you know,
right,
I think he
would.
would.
A different era. You know, if Uncle Jesse grew up now, he definitely has some tattoos.
So, sure. Trey, tell me, what is your history with horror? Horror movies, horror novels, whatever it was, since you were a little kid.
Okay.
Have you always liked it? Have you hated it?
Yeah. So I wasn't censored when I was a kid.
Okay.
You know, my parents had kids very young, and I was the youngest of 5, right?
Okay. I'm the youngest of 3, so I get it. Okay.
Yeah. And so they did whatever the fuck they wanted, basically, and we were along for the ride.
Your parents did what they wanted.
My parents did.
Okay.
Yeah. And my dad was really into horror. So one of the first movies I remember ever seeing, the first movie I ever remember seeing was Nightmare on Elm Street.
Nice.
And being on the couch with all my siblings and everyone laughing at me because I was horrified by the scene of Freddy Krueger coming through the TV.
Yes, classic.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I just remember that. I was like 2.
Wow.
You know? I must have been like 2 years old.
Okay.
To like set the stage.
So you got the bona fides.
Yeah, straight up.
Okay.
Yeah. And oh man, like I used to sleep in my parents' bed until I was like 5 or 6, and they would watch Tales from the Crypt.
Did you sleep in your bed? Was there a connection to the Freddy thing, or
Dude,
just it was?
I don't know. It was just like tumultuous time, I think.
Okay.
And,
I mean, a lot of kids sleep.
Yeah. I was like really attached and slept in their bed, but I think maybe they were trying to like deter me from doing that. So they're like, "Hey, Tales from the Crypt is coming on.
Nice.
You can stay if you want, but we're not changing the fucking channel."
The HBO anthology TV series.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Cool.
And man, just seeing that little demon puppet skeleton guy, the Crypt Keeper.
Yeah.
You know, when I was young, it was kind of like I would shield my face, but then I would kind of watch. You know. And
you're like with the peeking through the eyes.
Yeah, it was like kind of terrifying, but was also kind of into it. But you know, Children of the Corn, Pumpkinhead.
Okay.
Like that's what my dad watched, so that's what I ended up seeing. You know.
Okay.
And they compromise working class people, poor people.
Uh-huh.
You know, they were. My dad was like, "Sorry, dude. This is what's happening.
This is what I dig." You know?
Yeah, so that's what I watched. That was my first experience with horror films.
Okay,
at
and then
very young age.
Did you kind of take that into your life, like growing up when you were a teenager or even adolescence? Did you continue watching that, or did you set it aside? The reason why I ask is that's what happened to me. I grew up in the 80s watching horror films. My oldest brother was 10 years older than me, and so he was into horror movies in the 80s. So I saw all that stuff.
Right.
My youngest memory is of Michael Myers when I'm like, my second youngest memory. Is of Michael Myers when I'm like 3 years old, and I had I had a nightmare of him. But to me, it wasn't a nightmare; it was a dream that I loved. We lived in a 3-flat in Chicago,
yeah,
and then my brother lived in the basement, and we had stairs connecting all the floors in the back, but it was covered by bricks or whatever. It was indoors. And I remember the dream was a black and white, and I was running up the stairs. And I'm looking back at Michael Myers chasing me from up the stairs. And I'm screaming. But when I wake up, I'm like, fuck yeah, that was awesome.
Wow.
So that's I loved it growing up, but then I kind of like let it go when I don't know what happened. It was just harder to access.
Right.
We didn't have the internet. I couldn't drive anywhere. And nobody in my family, once my brother moved out, nobody in my family liked it.
Yeah.
So I just kind of let it go. And then recently, within the last decade, I kind of had this resurgence of this love in remembering all the joy that it brought me as a kid.
Right.
And now, as you can see, we're in my office, which is like horror memorabilia everywhere.
I mean, it's horror memorabilia, but I'd say it's like 80%. Halloween.
Halloween, Michael Myers.
At least 80%.
Oh, yeah, if not more.
It might be more than that. And just to set the scene a little bit.
Yeah.
Posters, figurines.
Cardboard cutouts.
Yeah. A curtain.
Yeah, behind that curtain it's just comic books, just a wall of comic books. Masks. I'm addicted.
Yeah.
So that's why I asked you. In adolescence, did you continue with that, or?
I don't know if it was like an intentional continuation or discontinuation of interest. I wasn't like not interested in it, and I never disliked it. You know, I really enjoyed going to the theaters when I was a teenager, and I loved taking my girlfriend to see a horror film. Okay. More for like the sheer enjoyment of watching other people be squeamish about it. Okay. But there was like
she can hug up on you.
Yeah. So there was a little bit of that, and I mean, the continuation of horror. Like, all right, so I grew up in Waxahachie, Texas. Okay. Very small town at the time. I mean, even still, it's a small town. Okay. I mean, maybe 60,000 to 100,000 people live there. I don't know, but at the time, like 20,000 people. You know, and there was a fairground. And during Halloween, it was Scream, and the haunted houses would be temporarily put up, and actors, the full thing, like actors, fucking shithead teenagers from the neighborhood or whatever.
Or only like a year or two older than
you. Yeah, or it was like a touring act. I don't really fucking know because I was really young when this was happening. Yeah. And then a couple times a year would be a Renaissance fair. You know? Okay. So my people would take me to play chess when it was a Renaissance fair, and my dad would take me during Halloween. Okay. To watch me be terrified. You know?
the same way you like to watch others be terrified, your dad liked to see you be terrified.
Yeah. Okay. And it was a little bit like, dude, we're going. Like, what are you scared of? Whatever. And he'd laugh, and like he just got off on seeing that happen. But it was kind of a thrill to eventually be able to go and like conquer that fear. You know? To like go walk through, I just wanted to be able to walk through the haunted house and not jump once.
See,
that's like I wanted to just go master the fear of the haunted house. Yeah, you know, but it was terrifying. You know, like everything about it was terrifying. And I'm talking, I was a kid, man. Like this isn't like I was like 9 years old, just trying to be like a tough dude. Yeah, you know? It's like
I get that, and I think that translates to horror fandom, like watching movies. Once you've been watching these movies your whole life, like it's about what you can put yourself through. At least it is for me, and I've talked to other people. It's like, you know, watching these movies like the one we're going to talk to today, which is so extreme, where others wouldn't really necessarily watch it. We track it down. We search for the stuff because it's about putting ourselves through that gauntlet, putting ourselves through that haunted house. Right. You know, to see, to come through
being
at
a little
the end.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah, maybe it's because you don't feel anymore, right? Because you're so desensitized. Right. I mean, not you.
Well, that's connected. Yeah. I mean, we'll get into that about the movie that we're going to talk about. I was definitely part of that.
So, speaking of that, you came on today and you said that your horror confession is that you've never seen Possession from 1982. Written and directed by, and I'm going to probably say this incorrectly, I apologize to all the Polish people out there, Andrzej Żuławski. To me, in English,
sounds great.
Andrzej Żuławski. So you can't find this movie streaming anywhere.
No, right? We
tried. So I had to get the Mondo Vision release from eBay because we couldn't find this anywhere. And Trey came over. He was nice enough to get the snacks. Yes. That was dope. And then we watched the movie. All right, Trey, so why did you pick this movie?
I chose this movie. I was looking at the list that you sent me.
Right.
And I didn't want to overthink it, first of all. And I think I was like, I think I texted you and I bounced around like, oh, has someone picked that? Maybe I had one choice before that. And you were like, somebody else picked it. I can't even tell you what it was. But I saw Possession and the cover that was on it. I was like, this is going to be a sexy movie. Yeah. There's something about this movie that's going to be sexy. And then I read the description of the movie. I made a point not to watch the trailers before I decided which one to pick.
Yeah.
and I just felt like it was super relevant to my current situation.
Okay.
I knew it was going to be psychological. I knew it was going to be different. I knew it was going to be weird. And I don't know, I go for shit like that. But the playing with the idea of, let's say, emotional dependency and toxic relationships and everything else, I was like, how is this going to work as a horror film? Yeah. This is going to be super interesting.
Have you ever seen a movie like this before?
No, not even close. No. Yeah. Is there another one like it? Are there comparable flicks?
There's movies about, there's psychological relationship horror movies, definitely, but none that has the poignancy that this one does, none that kind of go about it this way. It's definitely not body horror, stuff like that. So
yeah.
This is a one-of-a-kind movie. I was so glad you picked it. Off rip, what do you think? What did you think of it?
I thought it was amazing.
Yeah.
I really loved the direction of it. Like, I thought it was directed super well.
Yeah.
Right from the beginning, you're just thrown into this plot line of, like, immediate distress. There's no build-up or anything.
Yeah.
Opening scene, couple outside, man with 2 hard suitcases and a couple of bags, and a woman that's in obvious distress, and some shit's about to go down. He's immediately, like, barrage of questions. It's uncomfortable from minute one.
It's extremely uncomfortable. Their relationship, the dialogue in this film is incredible. Like,
dude, the writing of it.
Yeah, and it was written and directed by Andrzej Żuławski.
And it's not sparsely populated with dialogue either. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when there isn't actual dialogues, the same person wrote and directed it, right? The physical movement of what's happening, or the lighting, or the scene, is, and sometimes simultaneously, like that one scene when Heinrich is like dancing around and talking at the same time.
Yeah,
it's just so fucking bizarre. But
some of the choices that the characters made. I should say some of the choices that the actors made to portray the characters are incredible. And we'll get to it. So I just wanted to say the director, Żuławski, he is a very interesting character. He was born in 1940 in Poland. He grew up through the communist era Poland, the Cold War. He was actually kicked out of Poland in the process of making one film, and that's what led to this film. The story of him making the movie is kind of incredible. So he was making a different movie in Poland during the communist era, and they had ministers of censorship. I don't know if that's the specific name of it or the actual name of it, but that's essentially what they did. Each movie that was being made had a censor assigned to it, and then they would review the footage and tell you whether or not...
With like a team of people?
Just himself.
Just themselves?
Yeah. So they were the minister.
That's so interesting.
And
okay, hold on. No. Why would there only be one person reviewing it, though? Well, you know what I mean? Like, how many films were being made?
Actually,
they probably could have had a fucking team of people on there, but that might be counterintuitive.
Yeah, Poland had a thriving film industry in the 60s and 70s and up into the 80s. They were making, like, some great films. They were winning awards, even in Cannes. Cannes. And so there was a couple years where they won the jury prize in Cannes, like a couple years in a row. So they were making great films out of there. And this particular director,
a lot of films.
Yeah, made some incredible movies in Poland. But he was making one movie, and the censors saw what it was, and they said that the movie was against communism, and they shut it down. They burned all the sets. And they buried the costumes, and essentially,
excessive.
Essentially, he was kicked out of Poland. He needed to leave. So they don't.
One person reviewing.
Yeah.
How many people do you think were digging the holes for the clothes?
Right. Yeah.
More than one. There's probably like 20 motherfuckers doing that.
He probably
20 other people lighting the match.
He made them dig their own shit, probably.
Right.
So he had to leave Poland. He was told he needed to leave or else he'd be killed. And so he left Poland, and a year or so before that, he had gone through a divorce with his wife. And it was a very messy divorce, and there was a child involved. So he was going through that. He was offered a work visa to go to America. That's when he wrote the story, and it's about his divorce. His wife left him for a person like Heinrich,
Right.
with his child. And so the story has themes of like breaking up, separation, marital disintegration. But it was also about his separation from Poland, right? Because we see the Berlin Wall. Mm-hmm. It's acting as the thing that's keeping him away from his home, but it's also keeping him away from his family. He had this really tumultuous breakup with his wife, and then he turns around and writes this movie and kind of makes her the villain. Sort of, right? Like everybody's fucked up. Everybody's fucked up.
Your initial impression of, okay, so Mark as a character is the husband, father, right? Mm-hmm. Anna is the wife. In the beginning, the only thing that I could think the whole time, I should say that 30 minutes of this movie feels like 2 hours. Yeah. Not in a bad way, but it's just like, that could have been a whole movie. The first 30 minutes could have been an entire movie on its own.
If somebody made that movie, they would be proud.
Right. Yeah, the first 30 minutes was like psychologically bending enough and weird enough that would have been fantastic on its own. Because I remember you paused it and we were like, fuck, that's a whole movie. Yeah. That's only been 30 minutes. I feel like I just went on a trip right now. But for the first part of the movie, I just thought, what a punk ass motherfucker, dude. Mark is not. Yeah, he did. If that was supposed to be him, he had enough self-awareness to know that he was not the good guy.
I think he's a definitive...
And Anna even says in the beginning part of the movie, the first 30 minutes, our initial movie that we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
There is no good or evil, but if you need that, I'm evil. Yeah. I'm the bad one.
Right.
Again,
wonderful dialogue. Let's just get into it. Let's talk about, let's kind of go through the movie and just talk from there. So like you were saying, it picks up Mark has come home from we don't know where yet.
Some work thing.
We meet him and his wife out front, and they're already arguing. He's saying, "Why do you need to leave me?" Or give me some information right off the bat. She's like, "I don't know how long it's going to take for me to."
And also something that stuck out to me is it okay that I'm here? I could just go get do I need to go get a hotel? He's not really making a decision.
Yeah.
But it's that barrage of questioning that's like...
He's a cuck. What we say?
For sure.
He's the definition of a cuck, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say...
But a little more aggressive.
An aggressive cuck.
An aggressive cuck,
It's a new breed.
For sure.
And that opening synth score is great. I'm a sucker for synth scores, so I love the music in here. It's understated, and it's not used excessively, but when it's used pretty well. Oh, I was listening to say, it rubbed me the wrong way, the name Bob for a child.
Really?
Yeah. Didn't you think that was weird?
Bob?
Yeah. Just calling a 4-year-old, 6-year-old Bob. Hey, Bob. Bob's a grown-up
Not like
name.
Bobby.
Yeah.
Would you ever rather heard Bobby?
Bobby's fine. Yeah.
Robert. How would you have felt about Robert?
I don't like that at all. I don't like that at all.
That's like Grandpa's name is even older than the dad.
So we find out that he's a spy. He's having a meeting in a big, like, cavernous building, right? And they're asking him all these questions.
And they're in the corner. They're in a corner of a room with a ton of windows, and there was like 17 hanging lights. None of them were on. And they were shoved in a corner, one little desk, let's say, caddy corner to the corner.
Yeah.
Right? And 5 dudes behind it asking him questions and him answering very quickly.
Yeah.
Yes, no, that's why I'm telling you this. Yes, they go through it and they ask, was a man wearing pink socks?
Which comes back for some reason. And I tried to look it up. I thought maybe it was some communist thing. I couldn't find anything. But in the commentary for the movie, at the very end, within like 5-10 minutes left, the director brings up pink socks as well. He says, and he's wearing pink socks. I'm like, what is the thing with pink socks? It never comes around. Maybe it has some communist thing. Yeah. So, and that's another thing that I noticed is when he's out, when either one of them, Mark or Anna, are out in the world and by themselves, it's always huge and expansive and kind of open and free.
Right.
When they're with each other and they're arguing, it's always in an apartment. It's most of the time in an apartment because they do argue on the street once, right? but most of the time it's in an apartment and it's enclosed.
In Europe. Yeah. In Germany.
It's enclosed and there's all these small
tight
little
spaces.
Yeah.
You know?
That's another thing. Everybody was a close talker. Even the men would just get right up in the face. Heinrich,
I know,
was the best at it.
Not only that, but like when people were walking, like in those confined spaces, everyone walked very fast.
They glided.
And it was like if they were right on each other all the time.
Yeah,
all the time.
It's in a scene with Mark and Heinrich later. It's just like, and we'll get to that. So he comes home and she's gone, right? He's looking everywhere because he knows that she's with somebody. He doesn't know who's with. So he's looking through all her books and stuff like that, and he comes across a postcard. Yeah. Do you remember what the postcard said?
Said something about something is half of God's face and you are the other half.
I've seen half of God's face here. The other half is you.
There you go.
I mean, that we'll be introduced to Heinrich, but that is essential Heinrich.
And that's the initial because it's signed Heinrich.
Yeah.
So we know that that's the name of her lover.
Yeah.
Now.
Mark reads that and he calls her friend Margie and she's no help. Isabel calls and says it's over and that she's cheating on him. And this is when that dialogue that you were talking about is so great. Everybody's so blunt. Nobody really lies in this movie. They obfuscate, they omit, but they don't lie. When they answer the question, they are truthful, right? So he's asking her questions. Are you with him? Yes.
When he was going through her clothes, I made a note.
Yeah.
Smelling her clothes, and one thing that I noticed as well.
Yeah. Like
he's rummaging through. Everything was a shade of blue. Every single article of clothing.
She does rock blue. Yeah. And when she's with him, when they're with each other and they're arguing, the whole movie is blue. And when she's by herself, it's yellow. Same thing with him. It's yellow when he's with, later on, we'll be introduced to a character who looks like his wife. The actors were Isabelle Adjani, who did an absolutely amazing job.
Won Best Actress.
Yeah. Absolutely.
At multiple film festivals.
Yeah.
It wasn't just one.
And Sam Neill, who also did an amazing job.
In Jurassic Park.
And also, I think that the next top bill should go to the guy who played Heinrich, and his name is Heinz Bennett.
He did fucking amazing.
For
the majority of the movie, that was, aside from Isabel, that was my favorite character. What's Isabel's last name?
Isabelle Adjani.
Adjani.
Yeah. The director has stated multiple times that the Heinrich character, who represents the person that in real life his wife cheated on him with, he hates that person, first of all, in real life, and then he also hated the character.
Which is so funny to me, because you mentioned Don Juan, Uncle Jesse, or whatever. I should just say for any listener out there, I'm a one-woman man.
Okay.
But there was an aspect to Heinrich's character that then upon meeting him for the first time, we'll get there.
Yeah.
But I really dug him as a character.
He was a fun character.
I just imagined that this is because obviously the director doesn't know the guy that his wife cheated on him with.
In real life?
In real life.
He did know him. He was a friend.
Oh, okay. So he knew him well.
Yes.
This wasn't just okay.
Yes. Okay. That's deep-seated hatred right there.
Okay, because I was going to say maybe he's fictionalizing this person.
Oh, I'm sure.
But, he twisted it in a way to hate him.
If the guy was a douchebag at a level 4, Heinrich is level 10 here. Yeah. So they definitely amped it up.
Exactly.
I wanted to go back and say she calls him and tells... Anna calls Mark and tells him that she's cheating on him. And then Mark goes and starts asking
But
questions.
Mark is the one asking the questions. Yeah, right? She's not really volunteering this information.
No, but if she's
it's
asked,
very short. Yes, no. Yes. It's affirmative most of the time.
And the answers to his questions are devastating.
Oh, yeah.
Is he there with you right now? Yes. Is he listening? No.
Is sex better with him?
Have you had sex with him? Yes. Is he better than me in bed? Yes. You can see the pain in his eyes.
Yes.
Like, why ask the question if you don't want the answer?
Well, and the other thing is, I thought it was interesting that, it gets brought up later, too, the sexual competition aspect of it. I really feel like the director is self-aware enough to know, this version of that struggle is so moot compared to everything else, but you kind of get to that petty place.
Oh yeah.
Of like, is he better and better than me? Like, how much of your manhood is tied to this in general?
Yeah.
That it's just getting crushed because, like, honestly, that is something that you would consider and think, oh, I couldn't keep you faithful because I'm not pleasing you, right? And, like, that is when he is most devastated. But that's just to circle back to the point that they're naked laying in bed the day before she disappears. You're assuming it's a day.
That's right. Yeah.
And he was, like, confessing the fact that he had no feelings for her anymore.
Yeah, and she said the same.
And she said the same, right?
Yeah.
But devastated by the fact that someone may be better than him in bed.
Right.
So I just thought that he did a really good job going into that. Yeah. And you got to catch it when it happens, like, oh.
And that's the male ego, right?
Absolutely.
You know, even if you are... It could be an ex from, it could be like 3 exes ago, but if she were to tell you, oh, this guy's better than me, was better than you in bed, you'd be devastated.
All right, so is sex better? Then they have a meetup.
Right. So you know, she's answering his questions, and he's like, I need to see you meet up at this cafe
in 30 minutes.
And she's like, it's going to take me longer than 30 minutes to get there.
Right. He doesn't give a fuck.
He doesn't give a fuck.
His ego's wounded. He needs to solve the problem right now.
So they meet at the restaurant, and they're sitting not at each other's table. They're sitting...
No. And I loved this.
Next to... They can't even stand to face each other.
Right. And it's bench seating that if the camera is set up... At
a nice place.
Right.
But it's
a 90-degree angle.
Yes, exactly.
Or a 45-degree angle, and 2 tables facing... They're at the peak.
You didn't say there'd be math.
Away from each other.
So
yeah, there's math involved.
Yeah.
There's math involved. And they're looking away and they're rattling off the conversations.
Yes.
He wants to work out the details right away. And he volunteers the information that he doesn't want to see his son anymore.
Yeah.
Bob is not his responsibility anymore.
And I think he's more trying to hurt her here than hurt Bob. Or he's too caught up to realize he's going to hurt Bob. But he says, she's like, you can't do this to him. It's inhuman. And what you're doing to me is human, right? Because she's essentially doing to him what he would do to Bob. Right. So he just wants to teach her a lesson.
Right. And it's in the heat of anger. I mean, if it's 30 minutes or an hour the same day, after all this information is attained and divulged, he's acting on an extreme amount of anger.
Right. And so they get into, they're going back and forth, and then they get into a fight. And she says, the thing that set him off into a rage, I believe, is she said, if I knew he existed, I would have never had Bob with you. Meaning, if I had knew that Heinrich existed, I never would have married you. We never would have had Bob.
Right.
And he fucks that place up.
Oh, yeah.
He goes beast mode. He turns into Hulk.
And I got to say, there are so many chairs and tables so tightly fit together. There's no way that was actually how a cafe could have been set up. There must have been 1,000 chairs in there that he was throwing around. Yeah. Or it seemed that way because he was flinging everything he touched. But he was going after her.
You would know.
Aggressively. You know?
He was tossing everything around.
Yeah. And she was kind of getting away, and like this is a constant theme in this movie. She was kind of half-heartedly leaving.
Oh, yeah.
She was getting away. But there was a part of her that wanted to stay.
What I like about her, besides Isabella Gianni being like absolutely beautifully stunning and also just an amazing actress, is this particular character. She doesn't back down from him. You know, like she in a later scene, she just
we'll get to that.
Yeah, she just in his face. She's like,
intense.
"What? This is me. This is what I'm going through." Yeah. And he tries to intimidate her, and she refuses to be intimidated. Yeah. Which I really dug about that character.
Yeah.
This is where the movie kind of kicks off, and it slowly descends into hell.
Yeah.
You know?
And we find out 3 weeks have passed, and you don't really know that. The next scene that gets cut is him with a beard, like a growing beard. It's not a huge beard, but, it's more than a 5 o'clock shadow.
Yeah. It's definitely. His appearance is slovenly.
He's pale.
He's going through like a physical withdrawal.
And you see him trying to talk on the phone, and he's going like...
Yeah.
He couldn't form any words.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the fuck is going on? And you find out he's in a hotel room because the door's open, and you see a maid coming by,
Mm-hmm.
and he asks her, "How long have I been here?" And she says 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So you kind of get, okay, this is maybe on the tail end of whatever his immense heartbreak was.
Yeah, he went on a
whatever
bender.
he's experiencing.
And he went like on a 3-week bender. And then so he cleans himself a little bit and he goes home.
And his kid was there.
Bob.
And his mom wasn't there. Anna wasn't there.
Yeah.
And he's got what looks like jam on his face.
All over his shirt.
All over his shirt.
Yeah.
And then Mark seemingly... This is the first moment that Mark is really humanized as a character.
Right.
Because he goes back home and he's... Okay, I'm here. I'm going to take care of you now. Poor Bob, dude. You know? And he's like, how long have you been here for a while? You never really know how long Anna has been gone and left her kid
Right.
in the apartment. But at any rate, Mark has came back to be a father.
We get a little glimpse of it because Mark asks, how long have you been here? And he says a while or a long time. And then says, how long? And then or Bob goes into the story about mom left. And then Margie
Mm-hmm.
called him and said to be strong. You know, I've broken my foot and I can't come visit you or I can't come take care of you. And so that's, you know the apartment is in shambles. It's in a mess. And like,
But that's the thing about a kid, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That could happen in an hour.
Right. It could have been a day.
Yeah.
You know, it could have been 2 days.
An hour is too long for
yeah,
a kid to be by
exactly.
himself.
You know, you never know how long, you know.
And what I hate about this character, Mark, is that he is so self-righteous. He's like, how could you leave my child alone? Fucker, you left him alone for 3 weeks. For all you know, you assumed she was going to take care of him.
Right.
So you're equally as a shithead, you know, as she is. Right. You know, she shouldn't have done what she did. It was wrong as well, but you don't have a leg to stand on in this.
No. And then she comes back. This is the first reintroduction to
the
house. She always just kind of appears in the apartment again.
Yeah, he always just, I don't want to say he lets her back in because it is her apartment, but she does, it's just a toxic relationship. And it's the ultimate toxic relationship.
It plays with time so much. You don't know how long this process was because you never see her. The sun doesn't come up and go down in this movie, right?
Right.
Like scene to scene, it could be daytime, it could be night, it doesn't matter. And she doesn't like knock on the door and walk in. She's just in a room all of a sudden and they're talking. So you don't know how long it was that she was gone or how long she'd been there. But seemingly in every scene, it's like she's only been there for 30 minutes and then decides to leave again.
Yeah.
But who knows? It could have been a week. It could have been a day. I wrote a note, too, that when she's here, the reason why I brought up that she came back is that Mark is smiling whenever she's freaking out. Because at this point, this is the first time that you really saw emotion out of her.
Mm-hmm.
That, oh, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. Like, maybe I want to come back home. And he's totally smiling, saying, I can't stand to see you like this. And that there was that moment of, oh, I might get what I want. She might be freaking out about Heinrich, which is his biggest worry at the moment, because he wants to possess her more than he actually loves her as a person and wants to be with her.
That's exactly
he just can't stand the thought of her being with someone else, right? So now she comes back into his life. And he goes, I can't wait to see. I mean, I can't stand to see you like this. But he's smiling because she's as fucked up as he felt for those 3 weeks. Now she's experiencing some emotion.
Yeah.
And he's smiling. And there was that line and that moment, the way it was directed, the way he smiled. I was like, damn. You just communicated a lot in that one line.
I mean, misery loves company, right?
Right.
Also, you just said some shit that blew my mind. The movie's called Possession, right? You think it's about the woman being possessed.
It's not.
But it's about him treating her, everybody treating her as a possession.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Because even Heinrich in later says, or, you know, kind of insinuates.
No, and he explicitly says it.
Yeah.
You know, and we'll get to his introduction and we'll get to
so
that.
So it's about her breaking free, you know, creating her own self. Like she brings up Sister Faith.
And
right?
Sister
Chance, right? So I think it's about her letting go of, you know, relationships and growing into herself.
Right.
And of course, through the lens of a man who makes it now. She has. It's so fucked up, but yes, we'll get to that part. But I just wanted to say that was I never thought of it like that, and that's
in that moment though, that's what it meant to me.
Yeah,
you
that
could
totally
see
makes
that,
sense.
and all the other stuff that he was doing before, where it seemed like he didn't care at all, and then the minute she tried to walk away, that's when he started caring. Oh, I'm heartbroken now. You know.
So I was gonna say this movie is like watching a raw nerve. Like your senses are heightened while you're watching it. You know, it's like being in a room with a really toxic couple or a toxic person. You get their vibes. They might not even be talking to you, but you can just fucking sense it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Imagine that, just that feeling for 2 hours. That's what this movie was to me.
And it doesn't let up.
Not at all.
It doesn't let up.
From the moment it starts to the ending, and even the ending is like the most heightened thing you can go to, you know, and we'll get okay.
So then she leaves again, right? It seems like she's gonna stay, and he says you have to call him and tell him that you can't be with him. I don't trust you. I don't trust you to leave and tell him in person, right? So maybe she obliges. I can't remember what happens, but then, you know, seems like everything's gonna be okay, and then he wakes up and there's a note on the pillow. I have to go see. Is it Margie again? Or
yeah.
I'm gonna go see Margie. I'll talk to you soon, and it's like my love, and then signed my love or whatever. You know? And then he bugs out again and tries to go find her and finds Heinrich.
Yeah,
that's when Heinrich is introduced as a character.
And Heinrich is like the much needed like comedy. I know he's not meant to be, but this character is such a douchebag that you can't help but laugh when he's introduced.
Yeah.
But he's also so charismatic and so charming.
Yeah.
That if he hadn't just taken your wife, you probably would want to be friends with this dude.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So Heinrich is introduced, right? I just want to say my initial impression of Heinrich was because he was sought after. Okay. Mm-hmm. He didn't force Mark to come over to his house, right?
Right.
So Mark finds his house and is bugging.
And what's he rocking? He's rocking the open, unbuttoned shirt, one button down.
Yeah, and he's what accent does he have?
German
or French? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Is it?
It felt like German to me, and he had the whole white, like all white.
It must be German.
Like,
it must be German.
Like
I mean, his name.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he lives with his mom, or his mom lives with him, rather. One or the other.
Yeah. No, you totally know he lives with his mom.
You think?
Oh, definitely. He has no... This man has never worked a day in his life.
You don't think so?
This is daddy's and mommy's money.
Maybe.
Yeah, there's no way that guy has ever picked up a sponge to like clean dishes or anything.
Right.
So this is mommy's house.
So Mark is bugging, right? And Heinrich is just telling him, look, I don't possess her. She gets to do whatever she wants to do. That's why she fucks with me.
No one has
her do what she wants to do.
No one has the right to impose their will on Anna, is what he says.
Right. So
we'll see what happens later on.
I'm thinking in the moment, Heinrich's got it figured out.
Yeah.
And also Mark, and like the juxtaposition in this moment between the husband that is desperately trying to possess this thing he doesn't even want anymore, and the guy who is not possessing the thing that he desires, was so palpable that I was like, this dude's got it going on. He doesn't need anything from anybody, right?
Right.
He let this dude in his house and like look around. Mark's, I'll break down the door if I have to. And then he says, the door is open. You don't have to break it down.
Yeah.
You know, come in my house. You want to see what's up? And whoops Mark's ass. And it was like comical because he had some karate moves.
Yeah.
And it was super swift. And there was a moment when Mark had his hands around his throat and was going to choke him. And you see Heinrich's eyes get big. And then he just fucking dogs him one more time. So much blood. Just like lifts him over his shoulder.
He's a kung fu master, right? He fucks him up. But he's so gentle with it. He only hits him as much as he needs to back up off me. You know?
Yeah.
That's the worst part. He doesn't beat the brakes off you. I know. Bro. He just like, dude, I feel sorry for you. You are a child.
Exactly. So in this moment, I'm like, Heinrich, my note actually said Heinrich is cool.
Yeah.
That was the first note that I wrote about him.
He fireman carries him out. He totally subs him, bro. He like fireman carries him out and then puts him on. And he's like, bro, time out, man.
Yeah, time out.
While Mark is walking through the house, he finds out, he's asking Heinrich all these questions. He says, how long's it been? He says a year. They've been doing this shit for a year. And Mark's like, yo, I've been like in and out of I've been back and forth this whole year, and you guys still been doing it. He's like, yeah. And then Heinrich asked this such a fucked up question. He's like, the last time you were here, did you and your wife basically have a good time? And then Mark's like, yeah, I don't know. He's like, because the last time you were here, we, as in Heinrich and Anna, reached a perfect state of harmony.
Yeah.
It's like, you didn't need to say that, man.
Yeah.
He's so fucked up. Oh, but I wanted to say one thing. Before we meet Heinrich, we're actually introduced to Bob's teacher at school. Right? Helen, who is played by Johnny as well, except with green eye contacts. That's the only way you can tell her.
And a wig.
Right, yeah. So Mark sees her, and she's like, he's like, yo, what the fuck's happening? Like, he thinks it's his wife. He's like, what's this mask?
What kind of game is this?
Yeah, and she's like, not a mask. What's with this wig? And he tries to take her off, take off the wig, and she's like, yo, back off. So we're
but in kind of a playful, like, oh, what's wrong with you?
Oh yeah, way. but he attacks her.
I'm about to fuck you up, you know.
And so like we are now introduced to this new character, and we don't know anything. Why does this person look exactly like Anna? We don't know, and I don't think we are never told.
I have something to add, but not till the end.
Okay, cool. So once again, we're back at the house. We find Anna's home. They fight again about her lies. He's just nagging her. Dude, where have you been? I was with my friends. I was with Margie. I called Margie. I had to be by myself. But you said you wanted to be with your friends.
Is this a meat grinder moment?
Yeah. This is the meat grinder moment. But she actually says, "Don't you understand that you disgust me?" Like,
yeah. This isn't quite the meat grinder moment.
Oh, it's not yet. Okay.
But she slaps him.
Yeah, it's
right, and he smiles because once again, the only emotion that they could share together are negative emotions. Right, that's it.
Wow.
And finally,
that comes back in the end.
She has this like surge of emotion because otherwise she's like untouchable to him. Why won't you just talk to me? Why won't you? She's moving about the kitchen like, excuse me. Yeah. Excuse me. Like he could not exist. And it's okay. But finally he gets a rise out of her and he smiles after she slaps him. And he asks her to do it again.
Do it again.
Yeah.
Then he proceeds to beat the shit out of her.
Right. And that...
Like the asshole, domestic abuser that he is.
Yep.
And then what did she say? Do you remember?
He said, for the lies. He said, this is for the lies. And it's this scene, domestic violence, is fucking so hard to watch, right? She takes the slap and doesn't flinch and stares at him. The blood starts to trickle out of her mouth or nose. She doesn't scream. She just stares at him the whole time.
Yeah.
Right? And then Mark is trying to justify it to himself, right?
Right.
Because I'm talking like 10 slaps, right? 10 to 12.
Oh, it's a
lot.
It
was like, it wasn't just like one like you might see in a blockbuster movie. This was like slap, pause. You don't know if you slap, pause. Really indulgent in this moment. And then he said, this is for the lies. And then she said, if this is for the lies, then you have to add much more. And that was such a badass line in that moment. I was like, damn, dude.
And she just, he just looks at her like, fuck. Then she runs out to the street. She's just been beaten by him. So she's got, mouth full of blood. It's dripping everywhere. And he chases her, calling her bitch and all this sort of stuff. He's a proverbial nice guy.
Bitch.
He's a nice guy, right?
Bitch. Yeah. At the top of the stairs, And you think that's going to be it. And then you see him run down and follow her,
And then I think what it looked like to me, she saw this big truck with cars stacked on top of it. Like
smashed cars.
Going to like the junkyard or something like that. It looked to me like she saw it and attempted to jump in front of it.
That's exactly what happened.
Okay.
But also half-heartedly.
Yeah, exactly.
She wasn't trying to kill herself, but it was just like an illustration of that desperation of I'm teetering on the edge of I'm not in control of what's happening. I kind of want it in my life, but I just want to be out of this situation now.
And then what happens? The truck carrying the cars teeters out of control and the cars fall over onto the ground.
Yeah.
Right? You got some good insights, man. I need to have you back on.
2 cars.
2 cars, yeah.
Maybe they're the 2 cars.
Shit.
They're the 2 cars.
And I think this is where she snaps. This is where the rest of the movie, which we'll get to, starts happening. Because if you see her face, she's just been beaten. She has almost died. There was a possibility that she at least got nicked by that truck. And she's got this look in her eyes, and she's walking away, kind of striding away. And I think this is where she snaps.
She breaks.
Yeah, on this one, just like the car snapping.
Yeah.
If I hadn't hit it home enough here. All right, and then this is where Mark goes to a PI.
Yep. He hires a PI for him.
Even though he is a spy, right? Like, I
don't know if he was a spy or not. I don't know. I know that at any rate, you know that he's. At some point in the movie, you find out that he's trained some kind of secret service.
Yeah.
Some kind of government official, secret agency official, mercenary, something.
Yeah.
He has some knowledge.
To me, that's a spy.
About following, killing, whatever.
Right. So you would think he wouldn't do that.
But it is a gathering of information, so maybe it is a spy.
Yeah.
I don't think he was a
yeah.
There was some intellectual.
I don't think he was James Bond, but he was definitely doing some
collection. Right.
And then we also find out that I guess he's fucking Margit right now, because she's been she's helping take care of Bob.
And yeah, it's like he leaves the PI office, right?
Yeah.
And he's almost in you never see anyone drink or take drugs.
Well, we do see drugs brought up, but yeah, we don't see them take it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much of a theme that is. You don't know if it's a drunkenness state of mind of like misery, love, pain, whatever's happening. But he's like stumbling. He's like going down a walkway, bumps into Margie, right? Mm-hmm. And she's got a boot. She's got a cast on her leg. Mm-hmm. And then she's like, yes, I love seeing you miserable. It's so reassuring.
Because he said earlier when he called Margie to try to get information about Anna, he's like, I know we've never, got along very well. And, it pains me to try to call you for information. So there's animosity between them.
Right.
Enmity. So, but even with that, he ends up fucking her because this guy, he's obsessed with his wife cheating on him, and yet he cheats on her every chance he gets.
Yeah.
Even in the...
and why do they cheat?
Why do they cheat?
Low self-esteem, man.
Okay.
That's why it's reassuring, right? And Margie's got to be the same way, right? Mm. To sleep with someone that's in a state like that, that's going through that kind of shit.
Right, like
she must be in a considerable amount of pain herself to find that attractive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And Żuławski even says that he wanted to make the character Margie, repulsive. So he wanted her, like, the character to be not very attractive, and also to make her, in another way, they made her repulsive, quote unquote, to him and to characters, to the audience, I should say, was to make her wear a cast, which
that's so weird.
So weird. Yeah. But we'll find out that Żuławski is actually a chauvinist, like in real life. Like he was a piece of shit. He went through his own trauma, but the trauma that he put Isabella Gianni in to make this movie caused her to almost take her life. Like she committed suicide she attempted to take her life after filming this movie. Yeah. Because, as we'll talk about, and as you've seen, she gets deep into this shit in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
She brought it,
Absolutely.
And
if he thought at any point, if he was the character of Mark
in
this story,
yeah,
then you already know that he's a chauvinist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, Mark was the most repulsive character in this film for a lot of the film. And that's why I thought it was weird that you could tell at some point in the movie that it flips. And Mark is like, which was fine because every character becomes humanized
has
at
an
some
arc
point.
And all that.
Yeah, in the film.
Except Anna doesn't really get an arc. She starts out one way and just slowly gets quote unquote worse.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, you're right.
So, speaking of, what a piece of shit Żuławski was, He tells a story multiple times. He told it on the commentary and also told it on the special features on the disc. He tells the story of Isabel not wanting to wear the green contacts for the American character, the Helen character,
right?
Because they hurt her eyes. And the director thought it was because someone told her that she looked ugly in them. Like the makeup artist told her, oh, she looks ugly in them. And so she didn't... She didn't want to look. This is what Żuławski said, right? That she didn't want to look ugly on the screen, so she didn't want to wear them. So the next morning, he says he pushed her against the wall, and then pushed the door up against her, and was pushing it and squeezing her, and threatened to kill her if she didn't put the contacts in. And then half an hour later, she ended up putting the contacts back in and coming down and filming, the rest of the scene or whatever.
What a fucker!
But he says it like, these actresses.
They just need to be shoved around a little bit.
I know he's old school.
They don't know what's good for them.
But this is unacceptable. This would be could you imagine...
In any era.
Yeah.
In any era.
Exactly. But can you imagine this happening now? I would hope like this director would be run out of Hollywood. Right. But who the hell knows?
But good fucking movie, though. This was a good fucking movie, though.
Yeah,
But deplorable act.
Yeah, I mean...
And you can't say some shit like she doesn't want to look ugly on screen... She's breaking down the entire movie.
Yeah.
She didn't underact at any moment. Like,
no, she overacted.
Green contacts making her look unattractive. She's like pulling out her own hair and bags on her eyes because she's crying so much.
Yeah.
Being freaking out in the subway tunnel. That
scene.
That's like,
we'll get to
of course she's not afraid of looking ugly on screen.
So speaking of Isabella Gianni, so she initially rejected the part because she thought she was too young to play a mom.
How old was she in this film? Do you know?
I don't know how old she was.
Mid-20s, right? Early 20s?
But she actually had a child at the time that... So the director kind of didn't understand that. Let me see. She was born in 55, came out in 81. So the 55, 65, 75, 26.
26 years old?
Like that math real quick?
Yeah, quick math.
Yeah, so...
depending on when her birthday is.
So then, even though the director's like, well, you have a child, she's like, even still, I don't want to be typecast. Which is understandable for a woman in, not Hollywood, because this is Europe.
To be fair, she hardly played a mother.
You know what I mean? Like, her character had a child.
Holy shit. Yeah, it's not like she was a homemaker in this movie.
That is true. So, well, her American character, Helen, did. Right. So then the director met with the director of photography, who is Bruno Neuten. That's his name. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced. And he was talking to him about the project. And he mentioned that he was actually trying to get Isabella Gianni for the role. And then, but that she hadn't accepted it. And so Bruno was like, well, you know what? Give me 24 hours. And then he gets a call within 2 to 3 days. Turns out Bruno was married to Isabel. He didn't know that. And she ended up accepting the part because her husband kind of talked her into it. Whoa. That's like a coincidence, right?
Yeah, that's crazy.
But throughout all our experiences with the director, after filming of this, she ended up trying to take her life, which is terrible. And then also...
What were the details about that? Do you know?
I couldn't find anything about it. But also, Sam Neill said that he had suicidal thoughts after making this film. This is the movie... was the hardest movie he's ever filmed. And obviously, Sam Neill's been in the industry for 40 years.
Harder than Jurassic Park, is what you're telling me.
I think so, yeah. I think harder than Jurassic Park. Yes, this movie is great, but, to what extent did this director push his actors, Even, who was the actor who played Joker and Heath Ledger? Like, that's some serious shit. Like, I'm sure he had problems before that.
Yeah. It's kind of like, this kind of reminds me, though, a little bit of, like, you remember video games and gun violence?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. We're of the age that we can know. We grew up with video games
with
our whole life.
Tipper Gore.
Yeah, where you're going like, I don't know. That couldn't be the thing. Because of the proportion of people that act in films, far out films that do crazy shit, Heath Ledger is memorable because he's the outlier,
That is true, but I'm not saying that him watching, like, there's a difference between watching a 2 or 3 hour film and being in that and getting depressed or whatever, or
and then
wanting
spending a year making a
exactly
movie or whatever.
Being in that mindset for 12, 13 hours a day on set, for however many months it took. So I'm not smart enough to know the correlation there.
Yeah,
it's probably correlation to causation, but I'm just saying, it does happen to actors or actresses, and so to have a director kind of push you and push you and push you, this could have led to her. I mean, she did try to take her life. She could have lost her life.
Right.
So I just,
it would have been a higher grossing film had that happened. Probably.
It probably would have.
Right.
So I'm just wary of, like, it's kind of like Roman Polanski. Like, it's difficult to or anybody, R. Kelly or Michael Jackson. It's like, how can you separate the art from the artist? And it's hard to do that
in the moment,
or even, like, I'm from Chicago. We grew up listening to R. Kelly. I had to go through my playlist and, like, remove all of the R. Kelly stuff, So in that instance, I can separate the art, or I can't separate the art from the artist. But then you have Roman Polanski, who's made amazing films. You
just weren't that into R. Kelly, bro.
Nah,
that's what you're telling me.
You want me to sing "Step in the Name of Love" to you right now, word for word?
I don't know, man. What I mean by that is, like, for example, Michael Jackson in the Jackson 5. Can you listen to that? Michael Jackson as a kid.
As a kid, yeah. See that, and that's the line. Like, you don't know where to do it. So it's just weird. All that to say, this movie is amazing. The writing is amazing. The director is a piece of shit. We could say that.
A piece of shit.
Yeah.
But deserves compassion and love, just like
as
else.
all humans do.
As all humans do.
Yeah.
And a degree of understanding, and maybe that's what he was asking for with this movie.
Yeah.
Because he put it out there. If this was his story, he's kind of outing himself as a
chauvinist
and wife beater. It's obviously not an autobiography of his relationship.
It could be. We don't
know. But, who, you don't know. He could have been trying to deal with how fucked up he was by putting that in there.
Yeah. Okay, so getting back to it. So this is the scene where they're in the kitchen and she's, like, trying to make dinner and he's in his way. He's in her way.
This is amazing.
This is so relatable.
This is such a good scene, dude.
She's like, she goes to the cupboard. He's right there. She's like, "Excuse me." She turns around to get to into the kitchen. Into the fridge. "Excuse me, you're in my way again." Like 3 or 4 times. It's like, let me breathe.
And every space is cramped for a reason.
Like we were saying.
They're trying to make you feel how suffocating a relationship like that is.
Yeah.
Toxic, possessive relationships.
Abusive
relationships.
I mean, this is made from the man's point of view, right? Because he's writer-director and this is semi-autobiographical. But even in this, he portrays himself as, like, she's trapped and he's stifling her.
Right.
Just let her breathe, man. Just calm down. And then he keeps asking her questions.
And that there was that moment. First of all, the meat grinder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that scene.
Okay, yeah. She's shoving meat down a meat grinder so intensely. He's asking barrage of questions once again, like this needy dude that can't handle his own shit. Mm-hmm. Just suffocating her with questions and his presence. And we need to figure this out. He needed solutions. He couldn't accept anything for the way it was. And she's shoving meat down there. And the whole time I'm like, her fucking hand is going to go in there. I know her hand is going to go in there.
Yeah.
And then what does she do? There's a carving knife. Like a comical amount of meat, by the way. There was a lot of meat that was going in. And all this was intentional, I'm sure. But just to add to the sense of discomfort and weirdness and everything else. And she grabs a carving knife and sticks it to her neck. Right?
Yeah.
And once again, another suicide attempt. Yeah. Right? But she doesn't go all the way through. She doesn't slide it across her neck.
Right. It's just like
it's just kind of a flesh wound right up against the neck. And, Mark kind of snaps into "let me take care of you" mode. And
so that's the second time she's tried to kill herself around you, bro.
Right.
take a hint, man.
But what does he do though? Right? He bandages her up. He all of a sudden
because he loves to be in that protector role.
Right. Exactly. And then bandages her up, and then what does he do? He gets a carving knife, and you see him stick it to his arm, deep enough to create a wound, and just kind of from the elbow down to his wrist creates 4 or 5 wounds.
Yeah.
And then she
for
comes,
what reason?
And well, why would he do that? Let's think about it.
He just wants pity from her, or he wants her to know that.
It could be for solidarity. It could be, why do people cut themselves, right? It could be such severe emotional pain that he's trying to offset that a little bit with physical pain to like calm himself down or take his mind off of it for attention. Like, who knows why he was doing it, right?
Yeah.
But at any rate, like, the overarching story this entire time is that is an abusive, crazy relationship that if either party at any point had any degree of emotional, mental stability, would have been over, right? But they keep coming back to each other.
And one thing that she said, so this was right before she takes the knife, the carving knife to her throat or to her neck. He's asking you this barrage of questions. I don't remember exactly what it was. Do you love me, or do you love him more, or something like that. She's saying no. She's shaking her head no, and her eyes are like, and then he goes,
"Are you afraid I won't like you?"
And she goes,
Yes.
That is so real.
Right? I had the same thing in my notes.
I mean,
had the same thing in my notes.
It's so raw and it's so emotional. It's so like, this is the dialogue that I love in this movie. You know, this is real. It's as raw as that meat that she's putting in the thing.
Absolutely.
This emotion is out there.
But from the male perspective, is written
that is
from,
true. Yeah.
Why was that the one thing that she answered yes to?
Yeah.
Are you afraid I won't like you? Yes.
So
because obviously it was very important that be included.
Right.
Because the barrage of questions, and then all of a sudden you could see her response, and it's very quiet. And she says it low enough to where Mark can't hear.
Yeah.
And it immediately shoots back to Mark's perspective right after that. And you could see how he couldn't hear it, right?
Yeah.
And all that was very intentionally shot, directed, written for a reason. So from the director's perspective, the answer of, are you afraid that I won't like you? Yes. Why was that so important?
And he even says, are you afraid that I'll beat you again like I did or whatever? And she's like, no.
Yeah.
So that's through his lens. Oh, she doesn't really care that I beat her. Right? I mean,
so why was yes to that question?
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you afraid I won't like you?
And
like their whole sense of belonging to one another is like each other's acceptance, whole justification for like everything they did or to justify their entire life was that. At least to Mark, that seemed like that was his whole purpose.
Yeah.
Because he was totally dysfunctional without that. Even with being presented with what would be a more attractive option. So, wife that looks exactly like the one you have. That actually wants to be a mother. That actually wants to be in your house. That will lay in bed with you. Right?
More attractive to him.
To him.
We'll see. Yeah.
Seemingly, right?
Yeah.
Well, from the audience perspective of, oh, this is what you've been hoping your wife would do the entire time, right?
Right.
And then you're presented with that option and you reject it still.
This is the idealized version of the wife that he wants. Yeah.
So this makes me feel like, for all the shit that we're saying about the director, it took a lot of self-awareness for him to put that character in.
Mark. Yeah.
No, Helen.
Oh, Helen.
The teacher. The idealized version of what you think you want. Took a lot of self-awareness for Mark as a character to reject that.
Yeah, right. Okay, I see what you're saying. That's what I wanted. I was really excited to talk about this movie with you because it's not a straight-up horror. Until we get this neck gouging scene, this is really like a family drama.
Yeah, but like a weirdly crafted, artfully decorated, dance-like family drama. It's just weird.
Right. And then we get this neck gouging scene and then we're like, holy shit. And then you said he bandages her, right? Bandages her neck.
Right.
But while he's doing it, it looks like he's trying to strangle her because he's got his arms around her, his hands around her neck. He's putting the bandage around, but looks to me like he's strangling her, which essentially he is doing.
Right.
With his presence.
Right. All the time.
And one thing I wanted to mention here is that we don't see Bob. And that's one thing that I was really happy that the director on the commentary said he doesn't like putting kids in traumatic experiences. So he purposely didn't use Bob, the actor Bob, in any scenes in which the parents were fighting.
Right.
Or anything. Whenever you see Bob, it's very calm, right?
Right.
And he did that because he didn't want to, and I appreciate that because there are some directors who will, throw kids into, and that shit fucks with people's heads.
Right.
So that was something that I was appreciative of. So he takes the meat carver to his arm, like you said. She leaves, and then the worst private investigator in the world follows her.
But it's great because it's like everything is meant to keep you in this state of constant anxiety and anticipation, and the PI following too closely. Mm-hmm. The only thing that you and I could notice the entire time, not the only thing, but the prevailing thought that you and I both had was like, this is so uncomfortable. Why is he following her so close?
Right.
He's so obvious, they zoom in and he's like looking clearly at her. It's like, stop doing that. Everything about it. And then there's a little bit of comic relief on the bus. Like they follow each other to a subway, right? Get on. And she sits directly next, nobody else in the train car. Mm-hmm. But the PI, her, and a homeless dude. Yeah. And she sits directly beside the homeless guy. And he takes a bushel of bananas.
Yeah.
A bunch. Yeah. Bushel, bunch out of her grocery sack, peels one off, starts eating it, and puts the rest back into her grocery bag. Yeah. And she never breaks.
She's just like...
She's looking straight ahead.
I can care less.
Right.
But one thing I was just thinking about is we're talking about Mark stifling her. The private investigator is just an extension of him. So even when she goes out in the world, he still has a representative of him still stifling her. And she feels it, right? Because she's at one point starts running away from this PI trying to lose him. Right. So this woman can't get a freaking break from her husband.
Right. And then what happens?
So he follows her to an older section of Berlin.
Right. And she's running at one point, though.
Yeah.
It was so funny. In this moment, she knows that she's being followed, so she runs. And the PI runs as well. And it was just so funny to see this.
You're not fooling me.
Very obvious chase happening.
Yeah.
And she runs up into her apartment building, and he follows her. And he's within, it's got to be 2 feet.
Very close. Yeah.
2 feet, right? And she turns to go into her apartment, 87, and the PI just keeps running up the stairs as if he's going to his apartment, and then gets to the next flight and just moves his feet in the same place just to make her think that he's still running.
Yeah.
Goes back down to the payphone, tells Mark what the address was, right?
Yeah.
And to this point, I was going, what a fucking idiot. And then I was like, maybe he did exactly what he needed to do just to get where she lived, if that's all the information he was going to gather. Right. But then what happens?
He calls Mark. Mark's like, he asks Mark,
is anyone else there?
Yeah. He says,
I need to know if anyone else is there, right?
Yeah.
Another extension of Mark, the possessive husband, right? Yeah. So then the PI goes, rings the doorbell, rings it even longer, and then bangs on the door as if he was a cop. And then you see the door pop open just a little bit, and the PI slinks into the apartment.
This pisses me off so much.
Right?
Like, who the fuck are you to go into somebody else's house like this? And obviously, so this is 1980, so it's, we're in Europe or Germany. We're in Germany, West Germany. Obviously, there's a culture of, I only know the word machismo because I'm Hispanic, but like this culture of chauvinism where or the patriarchy is what I'm trying to say, where a man can just burst into a woman's apartment. He doesn't overpower.
Well, there's no. He doesn't think there's any threat of violence.
Right.
It's exactly. Like in general, that's a privilege of being male, right?
Yeah.
Like doing shit. Like I'm not doing extreme shit like this, but like if I need to walk from point A to point B, I don't consider whether it's day or night.
Right.
You dig what I'm saying? And I'm by myself.
Right.
Right. So this guy does that, and he helps himself into the apartment.
And he lies.
And says that he needs to check the windows.
Yeah.
That he works for the maintenance company or whatever. And he needs to...
Yeah.
Whatever bullshit ass excuse, right? So he's going... And it was so offensive to me. He gets to a point where the blinds are drawn. And he just fucking puts the blinds all the way up.
Yeah.
And he doesn't put them back down. So he's fake inspecting, and then he's like letting light into the room. He's not even leaving the house the way that he found it.
Right.
Which is so fucking offensive.
You don't pay any bills here, bro.
Could you imagine someone walks into your fucking house and then opens your goddamn blinds for you?
So then he's essentially trying to see if there's anybody in the apartment. And she's trying to kind of hold him off a little bit. She offers him some wine. He's like, wine right now? And then she starts laughing. And I think this is when she realized what she needed to do. How she was going to stop him. Right?
Yeah.
So then finally he walks in.
He's got to check the bathroom.
Oh.
Hey, I got to check the bathroom. And she goes, I assure you there's no windows in the bathroom.
Yeah.
But I must check anyway, right?
Yeah.
So he goes and he goes down a dark hallway. And what does he see in the corner of a dimly lit room?
The monster. Who, this is a good point to say now. The director met with, I believe it was Universal Studios. And was trying to, it was an elevator pitch. And for him, his elevator pitch was a woman fucks an octopus. And the executive was like, we need to make this movie.
That's what he said?
That was the pitch. So this is where we see that monster who was essentially a stand-in for some sort of human. Oh, at this point, it's too dark. We don't really see something.
And also it's like a very slim form of what seems like a man worm or something, but it's all flesh. It's all like tendons and bloody. It's just a red bloody mess that kind of looks like it's developing into the form of a human body.
Yeah.
But it's still not quite. It's a creature.
So he actually, Żuławski hated how the monster came out. He blames it for the movie being labeled a horror movie. A label he said he despises. He said the film was easily mistaken by idiots for a horror film. I think here he's referring to the American cut of the film. So this movie that we saw is the European cut. It was like 2 hours and 3 minutes long, right? There's an American cut of this movie that the American distributor bought and recut it. Cut it down to like 81 to 97 minutes.
How? What could they have cut?
They cut all like the dialogue, all the suspense, and they just left in the bloody stuff. And
that's crazy.
Enough to make the story have some semblance of a plot. I actually saw that. I live in Austin, and they have before the pandemic, Alamo Drafthouse used to have Terror Tuesdays, where every Tuesday they'd have a horror movie.
That, baby.
And they showed the American cut of Possession about a year and a half ago or so, and it was incomprehensible. Like you couldn't understand it. It was just like scene after scene of like a monster, and then the subway scene they kept in. It just made no sense. But that being said, taking the American cut out of this, we saw the original.
Yeah.
This is a horror movie, right? Like there's no way around it.
No, yeah. Well, I mean, what could you? You could put art house in front of it.
Yeah.
I mean, but what do you want to do? It's a fucking horror movie. Everything about it is horrific. There's not. How could you classify this in any other way?
The more you read
drama. Was he hoping to make a drama? I don't know.
Definitely, but I think the more I read up about Żuławski, the more you kind of realize he was one of those European
contrarians.
Yes, exactly. It's like he didn't want to do anything pop, and horror was considered pop. He was just an intellectual who thought he was smarter than everybody. Right. And to be fair, he was very smart.
Right.
But if you make a horror film, it's going to be called a horror film. So I wanted to mention that here. We're introduced to the monster. We can barely see him. Then this is when Anna goes into action. Do you want to say what she does?
Yeah, so she offered a glass of wine, and you see her whenever the PI is walking back and he finds the creature. There's a cut in the scene where she drops the bottle. And at this moment, you don't conceive of... You just know that she's had a psychotic break. As a viewer, you don't really know what's going to happen, right? Mm. And you see her creeping up to the PI. She says something. I don't know if it was an affirmation of how beautiful the creature was or if she said, I told you that you shouldn't come back here, or there were no windows. I can't remember what the dialogue was.
Yeah.
Because at this point, very swiftly, she has the broken bottle of wine, jagged edge. She's holding it by the neck of the bottle, and she just stabs him.
Repeated.
First time though, with a breath. There's a moment for everyone. Let it marinate. Oh, shock.
Yeah.
Stab. And then just stab, stab, stab.
Right in the neck.
Yeah.
Oh, it's fucked.
And stabbed dude is just like in shock, doesn't try and defend himself, doesn't try to get away. He's just standing there, neck exposed, ready for the next few jabs. And he gets it straight to the jugular. Yeah. All right, first kill of the movie, right?
We're like, I don't know, 50 minutes in. No, maybe even an hour in, something like that.
Yeah. So
and then I love this trend, and there's a couple of times throughout this movie where we have this transition from this broken bottle, in the neck with all the blood, right to, like, it transitions to Mark in their apartment. It's white, it's pristine, whereas before, when he was going through withdrawal from the relationship, the apartment was dirty and there was everything, strewn about. Now the house is kept up, and he's being a good dad. He's giving his son a shower or a bath or whatever. So you could tell he's out of it.
Right.
He's been out of it. Bob's teacher, Helen, who's played by Isabella Johnny, comes to the house, and
weird scene. First of all,
right, because she's checking up on Bob, or what part of it is weird?
Well, what's weird is that, like, she comes in to the apartment. Oh, we're in here. You want to see the best tub diver that ever existed?
Right.
Like, kids in the bathtub is like, oh, here, like, here's my kid. And then he's like, hands her the towel, and it's like, would you mind, like, taking care of this?
Oh, right, because Heinrich's at the door. Heinrich rings the door.
And then he goes and takes care of Heinrich, and then he just leaves Helen to, like, dry off his kid, But it was in Europe in the 80s. It was a different vibe.
And so now Heinrich's at the door. So this fucker, he rings the doorbell multiple times. Then he goes to sit on the stairs. You notice when Mark opens the door, Heinrich's on the stairs, and he just goes. He just starts talking.
It's amazing. And he's like, as a character, he was like dancing and talking at the same time. He was like touching his face. Yeah. He almost looked like it was interpretive dance with the words. Right. And I'm sure he was directed just like that.
He did come from the world of theater.
Yeah, whatever you can imagine, dance to these words and recite your lines, and that's what he did. And it was fucking amazing. It was like awe-inspiring to watch. I thought he did such a good job in this scene. Yeah. It was so weird, but like it worked in tandem with what he was saying. And Heinrich starts to reveal himself because his character arc also is like, seems like he's got it figured out. He's the illusion of this perfect guy that doesn't want to possess Anna at all. Mm-hmm. But guess what he's doing? The same shit Mark was doing in the opening scene.
Exactly.
And Mark is relishing in this moment.
He is loving it. The shoe's on the other foot now.
Exactly. And he's going like, I used to think that you had it all figured out or whatever.
I used to be scared of you.
You used to be scared of him in the way that you were a better man than me.
Right.
And now
because you could fuck my wife better than I could.
And not only that, but you could not just completely lose your mind over the fact that you couldn't have this woman. Right. But in his own way, Heinrich is doing the exact same thing that Mark was doing. Right. And this is the first time that you see him attempting to possess Anna. Mm. I just had to see her. I was overcome with, is she here? And he won't let him in the house. Helen's in there with his kid. And Heinrich is a different person, a different character, so he doesn't try and force his way in. Right. There's not going to be a physical altercation at this moment.
That's true.
But he does...
Although Heinrich still would have whooped his ass, though.
Right. He already did it once, and maybe that's the reason why he's like, whatever,
And he also says a line. He says, Heinrich asks, I believe Heinrich asks Mark, do you believe in God? Or something along those lines. And Mark goes, for me, God is a disease. Right. And then Heinrich says, through disease, we can reach God. Right. It's like, okay.
What do you think that was about?
No fucking clue. I don't understand half the shit Heinrich says. He's just that type of dude. Yeah. I am an atheist. I don't believe in God. Right. But the idea of God is certainly a disease for me.
Well, it's brought up a lot of times. Right. And God is brought up more than once. And more in the last half of the movie.
And even a church visit.
There's a church visit in there. But like the theme of God. Not like if you want to imagine like God in the sky, white from America, God. Right. But just like God is a disease. What disease did they have? you know, like this was some like very toxic love. Like I don't know that I can't not say love. Like something is going on. You know?
I think Mark at one point definitely thought that he loved her, but he doesn't love her because there's no way you do this to a person you love.
Maybe though. I remember I would like, okay, so really quick story. Okay. I'm taking my buddy Aaron to Virginia. He got into an MFA program to write.
Okay.
And he's going to publish some short stories or whatever. And at the time is when I first really got into the idea of like, maybe I'll be a shitty writer. Like I was writing really bad poetry at the time. You know, like embarrassing. Yeah. It's embarrassing to think about what I thought was okay to share at that time in my life. But like opportunity to like take him, because I'm moving across the country too. It's like, we'll just ride together.
Okay.
We talked about a lot of shit, smoked a bunch of cigarettes. And, you know, that was our thing. And I remember talking to him about a relationship I had at the time, which was like an open relationship. And I was moving to Portland to be with a woman. Okay. Right?
Same woman, different?
The same one.
The I was open like, relationship.
Yeah. Okay. And she had been there for months. And it was like, we were doing a long distance thing, kind of, you know, but it seemed okay. And I was bringing up a past relationship that she was in. And I was like, that's not love, man. That's not love. Mm-hmm. And he was like, I don't know if I could say that's not love. Like, there's good art and there's bad art. You know? There's good love and there's bad love. And that's all he said. But there was in that moment, I was like, yeah, maybe there are bad forms of love. And like love, not in the philosophical sense that it exists in a world that's like unattainable, but like however it's practiced here, as good or bad, and in many forms. Yeah, it's as real as you want it to be, just like the concept of God. You know, so maybe that was the disease that they were experiencing. This toxic, fucking real love in whatever form they were exercising it.
Okay, I'm gonna let you have that. But I would just put on top of it that I think a person like that, or I don't know what the relationship was about, but in this instance, that love, you're loving the idea of who that person is to you.
Right. Which is super fucking interesting to me because I was having a conversation the other day with the woman I'm seeing now. Mm-hmm. And she asked me how many times I'd been in love. Okay. And I said, it's hard to say because I believed I was in love many times in my life. Mm-hmm. But if you're asking me how many times I loved somebody for who they were, actually, and not for who I wanted them to be or how they made me feel,
right?
I don't know. I don't know if that number is 0 or not.
Right.
You know, so it gets really strange when you're talking about love in that way.
And that's the beauty of this movie is we're having this conversation about a horror movie.
Right.
Right. I mean, this movie is incredible. So we're at the point where he's just finished talking to Heinrich. How does that scene end with him and Heinrich? I can't remember.
He's shutting the door whenever Heinrich goes, you know, God, and that through disease we can find God.
Right. Okay. Great.
You know, so if love is a disease, maybe through love you could find God.
Okay.
Right.
And so then he goes back to Helen, and Helen's doing the dishes.
And Mark's feeling good.
He's like, "This is what I've wanted."
Yeah, Mark's feeling good in that moment. And I just want to say, I read recently Pablo Neruda, Chilean poet, dead now, but there was a line in one of his poems that said, "Love is short, forgetting is long." That it's interesting in the concept of love because Mark was just feeling himself in this moment. He had a little victory, right?
How could he?
He comes inside. This beautiful woman is doing the dishes.
Who's essentially his wife.
Who's essentially his wife, right? And then they're laying in bed naked. Cut to the scene, and then she goes, "We don't have to make love if you don't want to," right? And he retorts with something, and they kind of smile at each other. Yeah. And anyway, they're sharing an affection with each other in this intimate moment. Mark is saying, women are the root of my problem.
That's right. Right. He's a chauvinist. This is where he comes out and says, basically.
Right, straight up. Women don't know what they want. He's classifying women in this very...
Women are the problem.
Right. In my life. Not me, but women are my problem. And then Helen just kind of gives it to him. She's like this sweet, angelic almost character, right? But she kind of lays down the law a little bit. as far as that goes.
Yeah, and so, but I think they don't show it, but I think he does end up having, sex with her.
Right. And anyway, they're naked in bed and they share an intimate moment.
Right. So he's definitely cheating.
Right.
At the very minimum, it's emotional cheating, but I would think anybody would.
Physical too. I mean, you're naked in bed with each other.
Yeah. So that's two that we know of that he's cheated on his wife with. Right. And then I've also noticed that Helen is always in white. That whole virgin in white thing.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And then I put in my notes, Mark likes them toxic. Because what happens next?
He basically rejects Helen.
Yeah. Totally. Totally rejects her.
And there's another one of those abrupt transitions from them in bed. He's in bed with Helen and it's bright. To Bob having a nightmare. And now that's all dark and that's blue. So he had this moment of brightness with Helen when they're in bed. And then he's brought back to his real life and it's back to that gray and blue.
Love is short, man. Forgetting is long.
Love it. All right. So then Mark is visited by the boss of the private investigator. Or at least another private investigator. And he's told that the private investigator is missing.
My note says PI is gay.
Yeah, and then this is where I noticed that everybody talks closely, which we've discussed before, because the private eye was like right in his face.
Well, not only that, he was touching his arms. He was caressing his body.
Yeah,
as he was like, "I need a favor from you."
And I think this.
And you didn't know if he was coming on to or what was happening.
I think this is more about a European sensibility versus American puritanical ideals.
Right.
Because in America, we give everybody their space. We got our bubble. They don't have that in Europe or in other places that I've been. They're more up close and personal to you. And I don't think I have a problem with it. It's just it's funny to me that in my head I'm so Americanized that I notice these sort of things.
How much they were touching.
Yeah.
But it was a caress.
That definitely was a caress.
You know, I mean, it was very affectionate.
It was
not, and they weren't friends. Either.
No.
This was a professional relationship, so the fact that he was caressing him.
But at the same time, I know in India, male friends will hold hands.
Yeah, for
while
sure.
They're walking. So I don't know what's the balance of that American puritanical bullshit and just the rest of the world. Like
probably right in the middle.
Yeah.
It's probably a blend of
something
of the two. Yeah. I think the director was intentionally doing that because I mean, in general, every character was super animated with their movements and what they were doing. There was so much physical acting along with the dialogue.
Yeah.
That, I mean, it just like piqued my interest so much paying attention to all those things.
Yeah,
they did not let you get bored or settle down at any moment.
Oh, no. I don't know. Yeah, I couldn't even say I was, my mind wandered at all. Like I was fully, this is the fourth time I've seen this movie and I was finding new stuff every time. And I was fully intent on watching the whole movie.
It was amazingly done.
Yeah.
It was amazingly done.
So this is where we kind of find out that the detectives are a couple. Mark gives him the address of where Anna is staying with the monster.
It should be noted that Mark is not going to get her during this entire time.
Right.
Just a side
note. Because he's kind of broken away. He's
a little separate from it.
Yeah. This is his arc. This is where he gets his arc. So the detective goes to the address and finds Anna cleaning the floor. And then he asks...
Helps himself in.
Again, because of course, why not? I can do whatever the fuck I want.
Yeah. Gives her the same line. You could either tell me what's going on or you could tell the police.
Yeah. And then, have you seen this man? And it's obviously the detective. And she says he's in there.
Yeah, he's in the other room.
Yeah.
And you go in and full frontal, you see the monster more formed to look more human at this point.
Yeah.
Right? And he's, curious, mortified, whatever, shocked by seeing this tentacle monster. And then you finally see to the right that he notices that his partner is dead.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So then what does he do?
He kind of loses it and attempts to shoot Anna.
Yeah. It's shot at her hip once, right?
Did she get hit? No, right?
No. Maybe grazed her. I don't know. But there was no sign of a wound. Because all she does right after that, which I loved, is she had cleaning solution on a rag, right? And she starts just slapping him with this wet rag. right?
Yeah, in a bag or something she had.
Well, yeah. It was so heavy it looked like it could have been a bag, right?
Yeah.
But then she had the can of cleaning solution, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And then she starts bashing him over the head with that, and I was like, oh shit, she's about to kill him with this can. I thought that's where it was going, right? Mm-hmm. But no, what does she do? She gets the gun and shoots him 3 times in the stomach. Bang, bang, bang.
And he has the fakest death scene ever.
Yeah,
he's like, it goes against the wall and just like slowly, which
slides down.
Which is the most like Hollywood movie way of dying. Nobody does that.
Right.
But I wanted to back up just a little bit. When he first walks in and sees the monster, she says, "He's very tired. He made love to me all night.
Yeah.
He's still unfinished." I was like, "Oh shit."
Yeah.
This is another thing. Critics and people who have analyzed this film have said that the monster isn't real, that it is a projection of her mind, from her consciousness of, losing her shit. But to me, so she sees it, that doesn't mean anything, but later on, so does Mark.
Everybody.
And so do the 2 detectives.
Yeah.
But they, they say that it's all a projection of her mind. Doesn't make sense to me at all. I think the monster's real. And I believe even the director said it was real. But so I wanted to ask you.
Yeah. I never considered that the monster wasn't real.
Right.
Like, that doesn't mean that, like, sci-fi, horror shit, we're not tying this to the fact that, like, this person is losing their mind trying to create a perfect lover, a perfect situation outside of themselves to make themselves feel comfortable and a part of and everything else.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't mean that there's not some psychological bending. How does this relate to real life things? Right. But that doesn't mean that in this world the monster can't be real.
I think they're trying to make the movie smarter than it is. And this is a very smart movie. But I'm just saying, I think that's part of the whole intellectual, this is not a horror film. You're not seeing it right. You just want it to be a horror. No, it's happening in real.
The monster's fucking real. It's on the screen. Of course it's real.
So then,
when we create a situation as real, it is real in its consequences. Right. So regardless of whether or not we want to say, is it actually there or not, doesn't really have that much relevance to the plot. You know what I mean?
It's
still influencing the plot.
If the result of its creation or of its being there is that somebody dies.
Yeah. Then it's real. It's got to be real. It's real. There's real consequences to the monster being there.
Yeah.
You know?
So then we get another quick cut to Mark coming home to their apartment to a video reel from Heinrich. Heinrich is such a catty bitch. He just can't let it go. On the reel, Anna is teaching ballerina lessons. And Heinrich was there. We see him in a mirror. And this scene is the weirdest fucking scene in a weird fucking movie, right?
Yeah, it's super weird.
So she's looking in the camera while... the camera is of her teaching lessons, and there's like, what, maybe...
It starts out innocent.
Yeah, 10, 12,
very innocent.
like teen, or, you know...
Young women, preteens. They couldn't be teenagers.
Right, exactly.
Right.
They're all
10
like...
to 12.
Their leg on the bar there, and they're all like stretching, whatever. Then Heinrich gets closer into this one girl who's probably 8, 9, 10, 11, whatever.
But Anna's gently critiquing, lift your leg here, lift your arm up.
Right. Then she starts making eye contact with Heinrich. And then she starts being very rough with the woman. With the child, with the student. And then she's like, lift your leg. And
lift your knee.
Lift your knee.
Higher.
And
tighten your stomach.
And she hasn't broken contact with Heinrich in the camera. Yeah. And then the little girl is like moaning because she's in pain.
But also sexually.
There's sexual, a little girl, a 12-year-old.
It's meant to tell you that there was some kind of physical, sexual, violent,
right,
kind of get off in this moment. And for Anna and for Heinrich.
Right, to be clear.
Not for the girl.
The girl is just moaning.
Right.
But in the context of what we're seeing,
right,
between Anna and Heinrich, it is sexual for them.
Exactly.
So
yes, not for the girl.
No, not at all. And so that's so fucking weird because up to this point, I am kind of on Anna's side. Right. Like, it's kind of, I don't know if you know the meme of good for her.
Yeah.
Or like in spoiler alert, like in Midsummer, People are like, good for her, that sort of thing. So I'm kind of in this mind space for Anna, but not with this scene. This scene is really fucking weird.
But what's interesting is like you bring a child into the scenario, you're assuming that Anna was a ballerina when she was young.
Right. Yes, she's a teacher.
Right? And because it zooms back in, and let's say she's sitting down on the edge of like a dancing platform or something, talking to the camera and saying, I just gave her a valuable lesson that no one taught me that, you know.
She'll know from now on.
Whether or not she really wants to do this or whether or not. So you kind of in that moment still are going, you went through some trauma when you were a kid.
That's true.
There was still this pain relationship with her that was like, you flipped at some point.
And also, to be fair, we are once again, this is meta, right? Because this is a movie through the eyes of the director, who is a male. And then within the movie, Heinrich is filming this. And we're getting that, maybe we're just getting that sexual thing through Heinrich. And maybe Anna's just like, yo, I'm teaching a class. This is what I do.
Exactly.
So, okay. Yeah. That's true.
Exactly.
All right, I'm back in Anna's side.
And he's kind of like, she's trying to justify what happened, maybe. You don't get to hear what question was posed by Heinrich. You just see her talking into the camera.
Yeah, it's true.
But what she's saying is like, I was doing her a favor. I was teaching her something that nobody taught me.
And so,
I had to learn that on my own, is what she's saying.
This video reel serves two purposes. One, Heinrich's a catty little bitch, and he wants Mark to know how deep in Anna's life he was. Right?
For sure.
Two, it draws Mark back into this psychosis, this toxic environment, this toxic relationship.
And why is it toxic? Because he can't have her. It's a reminder that somebody else had her.
That is true.
It's another reminder, and he plays into it every time. I have very little sympathy for Mark. And I don't know if the director's trying to garner any sympathy for Mark or not, or if he's so self-aware that he knows how pitiful of a situation he was in when he was going through the same thing. Mm-hmm. But I at no point had sympathy for Mark.
No, not at all.
Not for a minute. I never thought like, oh, this poor guy. I always felt like, take a hint.
Yes, yeah.
That's what I was feeling the whole time.
So, and then there's also a little bit scene afterwards where Isabel Adjani again does a great job here, and she's kind of just talking. And this is when we kind of hear about the first time of like Sister Faith and Sister Chance, right? But she also says, in this kind of monologue that she's having, she says, I can't exist by myself because I'm afraid of myself.
Yeah.
So that's kind of this push and pull thing that she has with Mark. And it's even said possibly earlier on in the film, or it might come after this scene, where he's like, while you're here, you want to be gone. Exactly. And when you're gone, you want to be here.
Yeah. So I said home versus there. It was like a moment of clarity for him.
Yeah.
That this is why it's all fucked up all the time.
Yeah.
And
for
you don't
her
know
too,
where to be. You don't know what you want. You don't know where you're going. You don't know where you are.
And she's self-aware of that as well, as we
and she said, I feel nothing for no one. I feel nothing. I feel nothing. Yeah. She said Faith and Chance are sisters, and they don't care anymore. It's like they both stopped caring. If I could just have one, maybe I could be saved from this feeling of being torn apart all the time. But if she was two people, Faith and Chance, and neither one cared, is why she can't feel anything for anyone.
Yeah. So
if she could just latch on to something, and then what's the next scene? She's moaning at Jesus and the direction of the camera. Like, it was a fucking great scene,
fully cracked. Fully cracked, yeah.
Fully cracked. Because you're looking down, right? Like, the camera's looking down. Also...
The male gaze, Jesus male.
Okay. Yeah, just looking down, and she's looking up just like... she's like whimpering, and the scene isn't short.
No.
I mean, it's at least a minute,
yeah.
Right? It's at least a minute long. After this scene, she's like begging for faith, right? She's begging for something to help her out of this situation, right?
Yeah.
Because Chance isn't on her side anymore. She's trying to garner some faith. This is like an epic.
But she goes to that church for help, but she finds no help there. Why? Because there's no God. This isn't about God. This is about interpersonal relationships, right? This is where, going into this scene, probably one of the best scenes in horror history, let alone probably film history. But going into this, I thought, no one having just watched Possession leaves the same. Like your life will never be the same after watching this movie. Because we go into the subway scene. She's kind of recounting to Mark what happened. This is another one of those things that did it really happen?
Right.
Because we're technically not seeing it live. We're seeing it through her memory when she's recounting to Mark.
Right.
And what she does is it's a probably 3, 4, possibly 5 minute. To me, it's internal.
Forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The scene is internal.
It lasts forever.
Where she's in this subway hallway by herself, and she just has I don't know any other way to describe it, a psychotic episode. She's carrying.
She's having some kind of outer body experience.
She has some like bags of milk in her hands and some groceries, and she, tears them or throws them against the wall, and she's just convulsing with her body and her arms and just making these guttural noises. This whole time, you just watch my mouth is open.
Yeah.
And what a good job!
Oh my God!
What an amazing.
That won her Best Actress, I think.
Yeah.
That scene, like if anybody was on the fence.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that was pretty good. That was a pretty good performance or whatever. My attitude about her performance for the entire movie changed whenever I saw that. You know what I mean?
What's funny is because
it just punctuates how good she had been doing the whole time.
Because you had said maybe 10 seconds before this scene was about to start, you were like, she's doing a great job. And I'm like, dude, you haven't even seen the best part. And it was literally about to happen.
Yeah.
Another thing about the director here is that his direction to her for this scene was that you just fuck the air. That was his direction to her. That's all she had to work with.
And look at what she made.
And look what she did. Yeah. And they shot it once. Well, they shot it twice. I'm sorry, but the second time was only for safety. You have to do that for a movie just in case.
But they used
used the first film because in the second she laid everything out on the line.
How could you do that? A second time with the same amount of intensity.
So they ended up using that first shot. But anyway, so the scene goes on, and she's just convulsing with these guttural noises. And then she
smashes the milk, right?
Yeah.
So now there's this creamy white texture of things around her, right?
Yes.
And she hits the ground.
She hits her head on the wall sometimes.
Right, and she's on her knees now at this point.
Yeah.
And you can see her body clenching up. She's making noises again. And then you see blood coming out of
her ears,
neck, something like it was streaming down
her hair.
And the red and the white were mixing together, and you could see it pooling.
And she was foaming at the mouth. Knees. Yeah, she was foaming at the mouth. It was coming out, and essentially what it was is she miscarried. You quote unquote miscarried. She says when we cut back to when she's recounting it to Mark, she says she miscarried Sister Faith. And kept Sister Chance.
She couldn't keep Sister Faith. She didn't find it.
Yeah,
It's gone.
I think
she was really trying to birth some faith. Didn't work.
She even went to church to try to get it right.
Yeah.
This is her leaving behind both of them, Mark and Heinrich.
Yeah.
And going off to herself.
But what did Mark say to her whenever she said that? He was disgusted. He said, "This is the first time you look vulgar to me."
Oh yeah, yeah.
And he told her, she got up at that moment, and he was like, "I'm gonna need the wristwatch that I got you and your ring back." And she did such a great job acting in that moment. It's like immediate response to it was like she could not wait to get that off of her body.
Light work.
Oh, dude. And she was like, she was already unstable and shaking and was just like, sure. Cannot wait to get that off my body.
Yeah.
And shoved them in his hands, and then she's gone.
Say less. Say less. Here you go.
And then he calls, and who does he call?
Heinrich.
Does he call Heinrich, or does he call Heinrich's mom?
Well, they live in the same
He's calling for Heinrich.
Right. But he doesn't want to talk to Heinrich.
Right. Yeah, exactly. He ends up talking to his mom. And he says, I love everything and everyone. I have become wise, profound, and good.
He's such a fucking asshole.
Dude. And then, this is why I think there's some degree of self-awareness here from the director. Mm-hmm. As far as it relates to his part in his divorce and tumultuous relationship or whatever. If this is meant to be autobiographical in nature. Is that she's like, well, he's here if you want to talk to him. And then he goes, no, I don't want to talk to him. You know, it was almost like a comedic break in that and funny and a break in the facade of whatever this character was experiencing in this moment.
Yeah.
Like if all the things that you said were true in that moment, you would have talked to Heinrich, right? But he's like outing himself as full of shit.
Right. And
by saying he doesn't want to talk to Heinrich, which is kind of cool. Like it kind of, you know, as the viewer, you glean from that, like, yeah, you're full of shit.
Yeah, you're full of shit. And then he gives Heinrich's mom the address to the place where Anna is living. And then
Heinrich goes on his motorbike. Since we're in Europe, we'll call it a motorcycle.
Oh, man. Heinrich, of course, like you said, would ride a motorbike.
Yeah, he's Uncle Jesse, dude.
No helmet. Shirt still unbuttoned.
Oh, yeah, unbuttoned.
All white. Heinrich is the best, besides being the shit, is the best character in this movie.
This is what I wrote next in my notes. Heinrich becomes a tool. You know, I said Heinrich is cool or something.
Yeah, this is
Heinrich becomes a tool.
Yeah.
This is the moment where it changes for me.
He's turned into Mark here.
Right, and to the PIs, too. He forced himself into her apartment. He arrives uninvited.
Oh, right. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And then...
Offers her drugs.
Is
forcing himself on her.
Forcing himself on her. And he says, we're meant to swim in the center of the stream, not wait on the dry banks.
Which, while he's saying this, he's fully got his hand under her dress.
Right.
So we can infer what he means.
Right. He's like... He outs himself in this moment as someone that's totally deserving of nobody's affection.
He's simping for her.
And he's also says, he very directly outs himself as totally negating everything he was saying to Mark the first time they meet. And he's saying that nobody else should have her. They were meant to be together. And he's totally trying to control and possess her in this moment as well.
Yeah.
And then what happens?
He thinks they're about to go have sex. She passes the door to where the monster is, looks in there lovingly. Heinrich, because the attention is on him anymore, walks into the room and discovers the monster.
Who is more formed, again.
Looks more humanoid.
Looks more human.
Yeah. And then he's kind of like struck blind for a second. He's like, maybe he can't believe what he's just seen.
No, he was struck blind.
Okay. And then
somehow
because
he's calling out for Anna and she's there,
and his hands are out.
He's reaching out in front of him and she's backing up so that he can't touch her.
Right. And then
they make their way to the kitchen and open the fridge, and then he can amazingly see again. Maybe it was the smell of body parts inside of the fridge that wakes his ability to see.
Right.
And he sees, a foot, a hand, a head, in the crisper.
But it's not a horror movie.
And he freaks out. Uh-huh. And then what happens?
She starts, first of all, just poking him with the knife.
Right.
Just kind of poking him, and you see on his chest
cuts.
Yeah, they're just like superficial, but he's starting to bleed. And then she stabs him in the, I don't know, right or underarm area, right? Or on his side.
Yeah,
ribs.
It was about where the chest is, where the shoulder and the pec meet, or something like that.
And that kind of snaps him back into reality. He's like, holy shit, I'm in danger. I need to get the fuck out of there.
And he's the only one that made it out of there. Really.
Yeah.
Everyone
Which is
else.
kind of a mercy from her, right? Because everybody else died.
Right.
She could have killed him as well.
Granted, though, to be fair, no one else even tried to get away. Dude was stabbed in the neck. Yeah, he probably can't go far.
That is true.
But, yeah, nobody even tried.
So Heinrich goes outside for the payphone, calls Mark, and tells him that Anna stabbed him. Mark is ecstatic.
So excited to hear that things are going bad. He's so happy.
Yeah.
And then and Helen is in the house.
Right.
Helen, the teacher, who is seemingly the woman that he
or was
always
it
wanted.
Margie, whatever. I thought maybe I missed it. I thought it was Margie.
Maybe it was Margie.
Another woman.
Because he takes Bob to Helen in order to disappear.
That's right.
And he tells Bob, it's Mummy. It's Mummy that called me, right?
Yeah.
So then he drops Bob off with Helen, this angel of a character, and then he dips out to go meet Heinrich.
He goes to the apartment, he finds the dead bodies, and he is happy because now he has a role in Anna's life. He is now her protector again. Right? And so he proceeds to start getting rid of the evidence. Right? And he's happy, and he's also planning to set up Heinrich.
How does he get rid of that? This is where you learn that he did some shit.
Oh,
back in the day.
I hadn't even thought about that.
You know what I mean? Because you didn't really know what he did, like what his missions were, or what his capabilities were.
Right.
The minute he showed up and saw dead bodies and everything else, he was like, I know how to handle this. I'm going to burn this motherfucker to the ground. But how did he do it? There's some like lighting, some electrical shit, and he was going to set it on top of something that was flammable, and it was going to, at a certain moment, he had only this many seconds to get out of the apartment. So you could tell that he knew what the fuck he was doing.
Right.
This wasn't a sloppy job. He knew he had to blow up the whole fucking apartment, and he knew how to do it.
Right.
I couldn't walk up in somebody's crib and be like, yeah, I'm going to use this thing right here, I'm going to use that, and then I'm going to blow it up. And be cool, calm, and collected enough because there was a gun present, right? Mm-hmm. And he was like, oh, let me check how much ammunition is in there. Let me put it in my, in my waistband in the back.
Yeah.
So you could tell in that moment that he was comfortable with death, guns, and blowing shit up.
Yeah.
And this is the moment where you're like, okay, he worked for a Secret Service. He's a spy. He's something.
Yeah.
You know.
So then he goes, but he doesn't blow up the apartment just yet. He kind of starts getting rid of the evidence, and then he goes to meet Heinrich at the bar, which is just down the corner.
Right.
And then Heinrich is there, like, out of his mind. Like, yo, she tried to kill me. She's crazy. We need to do something. And Marcus is playing it cool. He's like, yeah, okay, she tried to kill somebody. Why'd you call me? Why didn't you call the police?
Yeah. And, Heinrich at this moment is still saying things like, we need to help her. She's obviously mad or something's going on. We need to help her.
Yeah.
And Mark is thinking the same thing. I need to help her, not we.
Yeah.
So
but he has the upper hand here.
Yeah.
And then he's like, are you on drugs? There's some mushrooms you gobble, perhaps?
Yeah, gobbled. He did.
What a fucking dickhead. And then Heinrich, he's yelling. He's like, I take what I want. I'm like, okay, now we know what it's about.
Yeah.
You wanted to possess her, right?
Yeah.
So Mark takes, so there's some garbage somewhere. He takes a shoe and a feather off of the garbage pile. Random, right?
Right, because you don't know what the fuck's going on.
You're like, what the fuck is he doing?
Why is he doing this?
And why not? So then he stuffs the shoe down the toilet to block it from water going down.
And it's in a stall. So he's, he goes and locks himself in a stall out of the view of Heinrich, who is near the sink, like, still talking, and they're still talking to each other or whatever.
And then he stuffs it, and then he puts the feather down his throat, which is a weird way to make you put the gag reflex, right? You could just use your finger, but maybe his gag reflexes, I don't know how Europeans are.
Deep down in there, bro. You got to get deep if you're European.
And he uses the feather to make himself throw up. I guess
a trash feather is more sanitary than your own finger, I guess.
Because he wants the police to assume that Heinrich threw up and then drowned in his own vomit. How the shoe got down there, nobody knows.
Who cares?
But so then he sets that whole scene up. He calls Heinrich over.
Hey man, can you help me?
I'm stabbed by myself. What do you want my help for? Right. Then Heinrich comes to help him, and he hits him in the head with the top of the toilet tank. Right.
Right.
Heinrich is out, places him in the toilet bowl, flushes it, so all the water comes out. Then
so the water won't drain. The shoe was there, so the water wouldn't drain. And so that his face will be submerged in water enough while he's passed out that he'll drown.
Actually, do you think he's dead
from the blow?
Gets hit from the blow, or does he drown?
He wanted to make sure, right?
So you don't know. But what do you think? What do you think? Do you think Heinrich was dead? Because it's more horrific if he ends up.
I want to think that he drowned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
But it doesn't matter, right? Because if he's unconscious and he drowns, If he were to wake up while he was drowning, he could have saved himself. There was nothing keeping his head down. Yeah. So he had to be unconscious.
Yeah, so if he was dead, there would be no water in his lungs because you're not breathing it in.
Right.
So.
Right. We'll have to ask the coroner.
So then he does something kind of real fucked up. He takes those drugs that Heinrich offered to Anna and he sprinkles it all over Heinrich to make it look like this fucking drug.
Like no blow to the head, like that head wound's not going to show up.
There's some
holes in this plan,
So then,
if anything, he's outing himself as a murderer, more by planting all this other evidence on there.
And then also his fingerprints are everywhere. But
right.
So that happens. He blows up the apartment the way that you're saying, super spy wise. Then he goes back to his apartment. This is where, from here on out, actually from when he goes to the apartment, talks to Heinrich at the bar, it's rapid fire.
Rapid fire.
It's in real time. Margie is in the elevator and turns around and her neck is slashed. We're like, holy shit, what the hell's happening? He picks her up and takes her upstairs with him. And we find out.
Had a body of some weird clothes bag that was like the perfect shape of a body bag.
Right. And then he places her in the apartment somewhere. And then Anna sees him and helps him to clean, helps Mark clean himself up.
Yeah.
And then.
And she seems like docile, lucid.
Yeah, she's happy even a
she's
little
happy
to see him, which is really weird.
Yeah, wants to take care of him now.
And
he's all bloody.
Wants to have sex with him now, which is the weirdest.
She says these words: "God is in me. Take me."
Yeah.
And then they fuck on the kitchen floor.
And then we find out that Margie, the reason why Anna killed her was because Margie saw the monster and tried to take the monster away from Anna, which. I thought it was just like, oh, I'm your friend. But actually, if Margie was having sex with Mark, does she now want doppelganger Mark as like a, boyfriend sex sort of thing?
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe.
I hadn't even thought of that.
Because, or maybe she didn't even know that was doppelganger Mark. Maybe Margie is saying,
oh, right.
That's my man now.
Right, that could be...
Right, yeah. And Anna confuses the situation and kills her.
Everybody's horrible in this movie except for Bob and Helen.
And they're the ones who aren't seen after all the shit really starts to go down.
So after this, they plan Anna's escape. And once again, he drops Bob off at Helen's house. He goes to Margie's house and finds... Oh, this fucking scene. He hears it first. It's the worst part. And he's like hitting himself in his head. He's hearing Anna groaning.
Yeah, having sex.
Right. We assume that sex. We don't know yet, but she's groaning.
You know. What do you mean you assume? You heard the moan.
And then, this is some sexual suspense and tension here.
Right. But you knew it was sex.
And this is the scene, I bet, in the director's mind he's been leading up to. This is what he sold the movie on, right? A woman having sex with an octopus.
Right.
That's what we see. This is so, I don't know, perverse, or I don't know, perverse the right, but weird.
Do you know what the most disturbing part of this was for me?
Disturbing is the word I was looking for.
The most disturbing part for me is like, I don't know, man. This is the 21st century. And we grew up with computers, with movies that were super graphic. Mm-hmm. I told you when I started watching horror movies, right?
Yeah.
So I see this scene, and we're not watching it in 1981. We're watching this in 2021.
40 years later.
So I'm going, like, okay, this is happening. Like, I'm not shocked at all.
Yeah.
I'm like more trying to figure out what's going on.
The logistics of it?
Yeah, okay. Totally. And I'm like, man, they did a good job, like, really making that octopus do the thrusting motion, And then, but this was the disturbing part. Mark is watching, doing the same thing I'm doing as a viewer. But Anna turns and looks, never breaks what she's doing, and says, almost. She says it like 4 or 5 times. Like, it lasts a long time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, being that dude, rolling up on that situation.
It was very generous of him to let her bust that nut.
And on top of that, what was he going to do anyway? His other option was to just walk out. It was never to act in a violent way.
Because he would never. Because his character
What could he have
never,
done? No, his character has proven himself to be violent or to attempt.
Oh yeah, that's
but
right.
he failed at every violent attempt he ever
You
made.
don't think
too.
in that weird fucking situation?
I guess instead of killing Heinrich.
I'm gonna place you in right now. Yeah, of course.
Hold on, time out. Let's circle back. How did Heinrich whoop his ass if he was Secret Service motherfucker? Heinrich whooped his ass.
Right.
Handily.
In a confrontation one-on-one. Mark is a sneaky motherfucker.
Right. Right. And he was also in a delusional, crazy state.
Right.
Or maybe that had something to do with it. So we'll give some
and also
allowances.
Heinrich was bleeding out because he was wearing white. So he was obviously...
And surprise attack.
Man, you can't get up on my boy Heinrich. He would have fucking whooped his ass.
That's true.
But I'm going to put you in that situation. You're in that situation. What are you going to do?
I would have walked out. I wouldn't have kept watching.
Okay, but you could also like push the
No, I wouldn't have done that.
No, right.
I wouldn't have done that. Because you know what? That was a willing, consensual moment.
Okay.
Who am I? I'm not going to try and stop it. My woman has made her decision at that moment.
Wow, your woman? Wow, very possessive.
My possessive woman.
Wow, couldn't be me. All right,
the woman I'm sleeping with has made her decision, and she decided somebody else. That's okay. You know.
Okay, so we have that weird scene in a movie of weird scenes. Then, like you said, he does exactly what you said. He walks out. So yeah, so he calls or he visits Heinrich's mom, and they have that scene. Not too much happens there, so we can just
forgettable scene.
Yeah, forgettable.
One quote was uttered. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Who said it? I know who said it. Mark said it, but he said, "I met a man that loved everything, and he died in a pile of shit." And he was talking about Heinrich.
Yeah.
As the man that loved everything and died in a pile of shit. So I wrote that down. It seemed important in the moment.
So then Mark then sees a dead dog, which he had mentioned earlier, and I think it's representative of him. He's the dead dog floating in the river.
Oh. He didn't say that to Heinrich's mom. He said that to the guy that was trying to recruit him for the job again.
The spy.
The spy guy.
The spy boss or whatever.
The spy guy.
They wanted, and what was so crazy is like the spy boss comes back and wants him to come back to work. He says he can get rid of all the dead bodies. They basically know of everything that's happened. But they're saying it in spy talk, right? They're not coming out and saying it, you know.
A little burn after reading moment.
Yeah. And then he's like, no, I'm okay. I don't need it. Mark goes back to Margaret's house. Margie's house.
Margie.
Yeah. And the police arrive at the same time. Mark jumps into the taxi and puts a gun to the taxi driver's head and forces him to crash in the car.
To back up and then go as fast as you can into the cop car.
Into the car, which he does and crashes. Mark, the punk, rolls out at the last second. So he won't get hurt, but the taxi driver gets hurt. Right. You know, and then
taxi driver also escapes. We should say.
Yeah, and then the police. Heinrich starts running down the street. The police shoot him
a couple times,
multiple times,
2 or 3.
He's downed. He turns around and shoots them. Right.
Takes out the one that shot him. The other cop is at the aid of the one that's fallen.
Yep, and he gets on his bike and books it. And all the while, he's telling Anna to get in the car.
This blue car backs up.
Oh, and
dead body falls out the back.
Right, so we forgot to mention that was Margaret's house. Margaret's body that's in the trunk.
Yes.
Right. And then so the body falls out. He's getting on the bike. He's yelling the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, ah, ah. Then he crashes.
Yeah.
This is a cool part. He's, what I was thinking anyway. You tell me what you think. He makes it to a building and he's ascending, right? He's ascending. He thinks this is his escape. Anna finds him. He gets to the top of the stairs. She meets him. So he ascends to that, but it's actually his downfall. Anna is his downfall.
Right.
Right. And then we see the creature's, the monster's final form. And who is it?
It's a perfect version of Mark.
Except he has the green eyes.
Right.
Just like the teacher. Just like Helen does.
I put Brad Pitt moment with Meet Joe Black style.
I've never seen it.
Meet Joe Black?
Yeah.
All right, man.
Is it
Put
good?
on the list.
Okay.
But anyone who's listening might get that reference if you've seen the movie.
But it was
So who's chasing them though?
the
right?
cops. The cops are chasing them.
And also
I didn't.
the super spies
Oh, right. Okay.
are also coming.
Yeah.
You know.
And I wanted to mention that the final form of this creature is a combination of Mark and Heinrich, because it's got Mark's face, but he's rocking Heinrich's deep cut
Totally.
V or whatever shirt with you know, one button, you know. So
Yeah.
I just thought that was funny.
Yeah. And one of the spy guys has pink socks on.
Yeah.
The main spy guy.
What is with this pink sock stuff?
And he pulls them up.
It's very obvious to us.
They wanted you to see that he had pink socks on.
But they both end up getting shot down by the police. Anna and Mark. Real Mark.
And they're kissing in the end. And, you know.
Yeah.
They're together in the end.
At least they were attempting to kiss. They couldn't really kiss because they were both dying. They're all bloody and all that. So I felt like the director was saying something there, that even in the end when they're dying,
they still couldn't share that moment.
Share that moment, yeah.
After Anna shoots herself in the spine, Mark is still alive, but barely hanging on. Yeah. He's on his last few breaths. And Perfect Mark, Octopus Man, comes up and goes, "So hard to live with it, eh, brother?" That's the last thing he says.
Which means...
before he dies.
Which means what to you?
Let me go through the full thing.
Okay.
Then, Octopus Man Mark, Perfect Mark, starts... He goes up to the door, right? He's walking up to the door, and Bob and Helen are on the other side of the door in Helen's apartment, right?
Right.
And then Bob is on the couch, and he tells Helen, "Don't open. Don't open.
Oh, you're talking about Doppelganger.
Don't open.
Yes, go ahead.
Don't open. Don't open," right? Mm-hmm. And Helen's, "It could be your dad. I have to open." And she's walking towards the door, and you see Mark, Perfect Octopus Man Mark, moving like an octopus.
Behind like a grayed out glass or something. So
right.
You don't see his face.
Right. But, you know.
Oh, moving like an octopus, right?
Yeah, and he's kind of like dancing on the glass, like it's very sensual, you know.
Like you would see in a 90s R&B movie.
Right.
I mean, R&B video.
Right,
yeah.
But a little less synchronized, you know.
Yeah.
And then what does Bob do? He runs and jumps. He's a bathtub diver, expert bathtub diver, right?
Yeah.
But he puts his head under, and it doesn't look like he's coming back up.
Well, he's holding his breath, yeah.
Well, I'm like, is he drowning himself in the bathtub, or what the fuck is going on?
Right.
Or is this just the way he comforts himself to get away from the drama and everything else, which is why he was doing that with his parents, too. You know what I mean?
Right.
This is like some kind of self-soothing thing that he's doing. And then the last scene, you zoom in, Helen's looking away from the door. She hasn't opened the door yet. And you just see Perfect Mark, Octopus Man, just like dancing against the glass.
And it zooms in on her.
And it zooms in on her, and then it's over.
But then also you're hearing in the background like what sounds like a war happening, or at least on the outside there's bombs going off or guns going off, like something, like the world's ending. The reason why I bring that up is because in 2 other movies that this director has done, his movies have ended with apocalypses.
Right.
So we're led to believe, at least in this one, that if it's not an apocalypse, at least something is breaking out outside. But for some unknown reason, we don't know why.
Right.
And I think it's just another way to keep you off balance.
Yeah.
Because this whole movie you're off balance. You never catch your footing with this.
All right, so both Anna and Mark die.
Yep.
Helen and Perfect Mark live. And it seems like they're at the crux of a decision. And the kid is begging Helen not to open the door.
Yeah.
You know? It's like an opportunity for them to not be together again. And the kid is just begging, like, do not be together. You know what I mean? Or, like, don't open the fucking door, please.
Fuck, man. Or is it like an allegory for, like, trying to start over anew?
Yeah.
And the maybe son's like, it's not going to happen. I know it's not.
Or maybe it has not. Maybe it's even more metaphorical than that. And it's like, this is the death of a relationship, right? And then here's this other opportunity, and like, it's scary and everything else, but at some point you have to jump back in the ring and
Yeah.
give love its time again, or what?
So,
And for me, I was like the two sisters, Faith
Chance.
and Chance. You're like, oh, Helen and Anna. Helen was Faith, and Anna was Chance.
Fuck. And so she said she killed Faith when she had that abortion.
Right.
I'm sorry, not abortion, I apologize. Miscarriage.
Right.
In the subway. But Faith, represented by Helen, is still alive at the end of the movie. I would think, right? Is that what you're saying?
Or I'm saying there's two sisters, right?
Yeah.
That are seemingly identical sisters. But what is it? I mean, Faith and Chance, like, and what area does that reference? Like, this is all about relationships, right? It's all about love and toxic relationships and everything else. So, Faith and Chance, like, what relevance does that have in relationships?
Maybe there's some semblance of hope in this, in that they went through this shit together with their relationship, and they came out new people, and you change, and people change, and
right.
That's okay. Sometimes you change with the person, and sometimes you don't.
Right.
You know, and in this instance, they didn't change because, to be fair, Helen didn't change at all. We don't know what her backstory is, other than she appeared.
And neither did Mark. Perfect Mark.
Yeah.
Because Mark wasn't even formed into a person. Yeah. If anything, if it was an object of each other's creation, let's say God, that octopus person, whatever was happening there was a creation of Helen's. For Helen, not for Helen, for Anna, specifically for Anna.
Yeah.
As this perfect man. You know? Helen was a creation of a perfect woman for Mark.
Oh, wow. So Helen has green eyes.
Perfect
Mark, new Mark, has green eyes. We know how Mark was formed. So then are we to take that's how Helen was formed? So did original Mark go through this process already?
Maybe. That's what I'm saying. Maybe he went through that process first, you know?
And maybe he thought he was hallucinating or whatever. So when he sees her in real life, he's like, what?
And not only that, it's like water seeks its own level, right? Like, what if he thought he was ready for perfect Anna, Helen, but wasn't, and was still sought out Anna, and Anna was like ready for something new, ready for perfect Mark.
This movie, man, yeah, this movie is incredible.
But they died together in the end, you know, and she killed herself.
So why do you think that this movie passed you by? Had you never heard of it?
I'd never heard of it.
Never even heard of it?
Yeah, not even close.
Okay.
Like all the other shit on there, not all of it, but there was a lot of stuff on there where you're like, oh yeah, there was plenty of stuff on there I hadn't seen.
Right.
Let me just say that too. Because how many movies were there? 50? Did you send 50?
At that point, the list is 50. Now it's over 250.
Right. There's going to be a lot of stuff on there that I hadn't seen.
There's a lot of horror classics. What can I say?
Yeah. But yeah, definitely had not heard of it. And it kind of felt like it was going to hit a niche that I was like, yeah, I want to go for it.
Okay.
But I'm also a roll the dice kind of guy. I was like, I don't know.
Well, you made a right choice.
Pick one.
All right. So what we do here is we rate movies out of 5 upside down crosses.
Okay. Cool.
And it's whatever your rating system is. I have people who go on quality only, or enjoyability, rewatchability. Like, would you rewatch this movie again?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I would sit in my house and watch this again, but it's by myself. But it's one of those movies that I could see myself watching multiple times throughout my life with somebody else that hasn't seen it.
Yeah. To
experience that with them.
It's an experience type of movie, and once you see this movie, you want others to see it as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Because look at the conversation we had. We're like at 2.5 hours.
It's crazy.
Just talking about this movie, and we can go on, but we're not going to do that because we know we got to wrap this up. So with that said, out of 5 upside down crosses. So
4.35.
4.35 upside down crosses.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like 5 would be too strong, but
5 is perfect.
But I don't know what critiques I have. What I would have done differently.
I feel like when you see a perfect movie, you know it.
Yeah.
I think I give this movie 5 stars.
Dude, it's amazing.
It's a great movie.
I mean, as far as like every aspect of it, it seemed like no stone unturned as far as lighting, script, directing, producing, the music, the physical acting aspect of it. Like every character took it on as their own. It was really amazing, and there wasn't a huge cast.
No, it was. It was a very small cast.
Fucking 2-hour-long movie of about 3 main characters.
Yeah, and obviously Isabella Adjani was the standout here. The job she did was amazing. You can't say enough. So now that you've confessed, which I appreciate you confessing, the next step is absolution. I will now absolve you of your horror sin.
Thank you.
The way to get about completing this absolution is to watch 3 horror movies. You'll watch these movies, and then you'll come back and we'll talk about it. I'd love to have you.
This is very Catholic of you.
I'm a former Catholic.
You're a reformed Catholic.
I do not believe in God. This is just a format, but
yeah.
I do like it. All right, so the 3 movies that I'm going to have you watch are Repulsion, 1965 by Roman Polanski, who's another Polish director.
Right.
Was active the same time that this Żuławski was. In the Mouth of Madness, 1994, John Carpenter, also starring Sam Neill.
Nice.
And then Martin from 1977 by George Romero.
Okay.
So you'd watch those movies, and we'll talk about it next time you come on.
All right, let's do it, baby.
All right. So
thanks for having me.
No problem. Thanks for coming on here. So Trey, normally what I would do here is let my guests do plugs anywhere they want to be found, if any merch they want to sell. But Trey is such a Renaissance man. He doesn't do social media.
You can't find me.
You can't find me. You can't find him. So, is there anything that you're working on? Anything that you want to talk about, or anything like that?
I mean,
are you writing any new poetry or anything?
Yeah, I am. But it's sporadic. I'm trying to read a lot right now.
Okay.
I'm trying. I'm writing poetry, but it stays in a little book by my bedside.
Okay.
Maybe someday I'll put a little collection together. I did have an idea for a new zine. I've been tossing around.
Okay.
Like that was a very happy time in my life. Just making art quickly.
Yeah.
And getting it out. Like editing books is a pain in the fucking ass, and I don't want to do shit like that anymore.
Right.
But the zines is like one pass. So I was thinking about Fast Clip as being the name of the zine.
Okay.
Kind of spin off of Mad Shade and just doing same kind of deal. Like getting people together, getting people's artwork together, and putting out a bunch of issues.
Okay.
You know.
That's cool.
But yeah, Fast Clip maybe.
All right.
Maybe
so,
you might see a Fast Clip somewhere.
Right. Do you think you'll ever be on social media to promote it, or are you just going full grunge punk?
Grunge punk, dude. Yeah. You gotta find it out there somewhere.
Okay. Well, if you happen to come across, what's it called?
Fast Clip.
Fast Clip in the future,
you'll know where it came from.
Yeah.
And mentioned here first.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I don't think I've talked to anybody about that yet.
I appreciate that. And I am Miguel Myers. You can find me on Twitter at MHCPod, My Horror Confessional Pod, MHC Pod. You can find me on Instagram at My Horror Confessional. If you want to email me, my email is myhorrorconfessional@gmail.com. And the music that you heard, the intro and the outro, was done by Taylor Fox. You can follow her at Taylor Fox on Instagram. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you later.